rematch is upon us. Stipe Miocic with a chance to regain the UFC heavyweight title as he re-engages with the man who beat him for the belt. Oh! Right hand up top! DC's hurt! Cormier in trouble! Oh, that's it! Stipe, he gets his revenge!
They need to settle this once and for all.
For legacy, this fight is for history.
I've accomplished everything that I've ever wanted to accomplish. I mean, I could have walked away, but my legacy matters to me. I have to right that wrong.
One of the greatest of all time, Daniel Cormier.
This fight's for legacy. This fight's for everything. I want to be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And this has huge stakes on it. The world's going to be watching. I have to win this fight.
Stipe Miocic, the most accomplished UFC heavyweight champion this octagon has ever seen.
Being the UFC heavyweight champion is everything to me. I know I'm a better fighter. I'm going to prove it. Walking out with my belt.
And let's go. This is the fight that settles it all.
Woo! All the feels. That's what it's all about. Welcome to BT Sport Open Mat Live. We are bringing you the UFC 252 official weigh-ins. I'm Adam Catterall. As you can see, Nick Pete's with me and the main man, Dan Hardy. Action-packed night of action going down in the early hours of Sunday morning on BT Sport. Now, this show is purely interactive. You can come and join us on Twitter. Use the hashtag OpenMat, or you can drop a comment in the section on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you are watching this live stream. We're going to go through all the fighters as they weigh in. We'll talk about all the little bits of narrative that are connected to this major event as well. And we would love you to become a part of that by dropping in those comments. We saw yesterday at the press conference, Dana White getting all excited, referring to this as the decider for the greatest heavyweight of all time. He's not wrong, is he?
Well, no, I mean, the thing is, we've never seen a fight so closely contested. I mean, we know both of these guys have got the capability of beating one another, and not only beating one another, but they could stop one another. I just think this is the most honest contest out of all three fights that they'll have. I think the first time there was some underestimation on Miocic's part. I think the second time around there was underestimation on DC's part. But both of these guys are proven heavyweights, proven against each other as well.
Nick, I don't want you ever taking the mick out of my skinny jeans as well, because I don't know if you saw there, but the baddest man on the planet, Stipe Miocic, was sporting a pair at yesterday's press conference and looking blooming daft for sunshine. So I know that they're trendy.
In Cleveland, maybe. I don't know about anywhere else. But yeah, listen.
Talk to me.
The good thing is they both look good, don't they? You know, we've all been engrossed and embedded these last couple of days, I'm sure, trying to get as close to the action as possible. It's so unusual to be so far disconnected in some ways from the fight. You know, you like to see the white of the fighter's eyes. You like to see the way they're walking, the way they're talking, the way they carry themselves, the way they are off camera. You know, that's what I love seeing. How fighters are behaving off camera. Are they reaching for the water bottle every 2 minutes? Are they talking to their corner, whispering in ears and whatever else? And having that disconnect makes you, you want to just get involved a little bit more. You want to try and be glued to it that little bit more. And I've been trying to get as much from those embedded videos as I possibly can. And, for me, Miocic, again, it just looks like it's another fight, another day. That's going to give him a whole different type of calmness. And I think DC's kind of feeling the moment. I think DC realizes it's 25 minutes or bust. It's all on this fight, and the last thing he wants to do, the last thing is 3 decades of competition deserves is to go out with a loss. And I think he's feeling the pressure a little bit.
We've got a couple of minutes before the guys and girls start hitting the scale. So, Dan, I'll ask you this question. How dangerous is it when you are a fighter with 1 foot in and 1 foot out of that octagon? And I'm, of course, referring to DC, knowing full well that this is his retirement fight.
Yeah, I think really it's down to the fighter. It's a lot like whether a crowd affects a fighter or not. I think it's down to the individual. If you look at someone like DC, his training camps are a grind. That's his whole thing. It's his whole brand. Embrace the grind. He's used to pushing himself through those training camps, making it uncomfortable. So then he can put that discomfort on somebody else when it comes to fight time. I would imagine there's a silver lining to this fight, knowing that he doesn't ever have to do that again. And I just feel, for a competitor like DC, I think that every time he was getting on that air dyne, or he was putting his running shoes on, or lacing up his mitts, I just feel like there was a feeling that the finish line's in sight. And I think for his kind of psychology, that helps. I think it's possibly more problematic for Stipe Miocic, because he knows if he loses this fight to DC, there's no chance of redemption. DC's not going to come back and give him a rematch. Whereas if DC doesn't pick up the win, I don't think he'll be able to retire. So I think and I didn't think about this until earlier today, but there's definitely a pressure on Miocic, because he needs to beat DC this time, because it'll be his last opportunity.
Good point.
Nick, from an emotional point of view, how do you think Stipe is going to approach this fight? Because he's obviously a little bit vexed because of the operation that he's had, caused by those finger pokes in the last couple of contests. How do you think he's going to approach it?
You know what? I think both these guys have got so much experience now, certainly at this level. I think we're going to see, both of them will be totally prepared this time. Both of them, as Dan's just pointed out, neither of them, can afford to pick up an L here, because the chances of redemption are very slim, regardless of which guy gets it. So I think both of them will come at it with a different approach in regard. So they won't wear the heart on the sleeve as much. You'll see complete focus. That's why I expect this to go the full 5 rounds. I think both of them will have 1 or 2 or even 3 game plans that they may have to implement throughout this fight.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the weigh-ins for UFC 252. We'll get started with the first to the scale, the strawweight Ashley Yoder.
There you go. So these are live pictures now from Las Vegas. These guys are going to be fighting inside the Apex tomorrow night, early hours of Sunday morning, as you just heard there. Ashley Yoder is first up. She's going to be kicking it off on the prelims. This is not the early prelims, the prelims. She's taking on Livia Renata Souza. This is a women's strawweight contest.
She has missed weight before, Yoda. She missed weight a couple of years ago when she was still an Invicta.
Official weight 115.5 for
Not
Ashley
today.
Yoder.
Not today. On the button, Ashley Yoder. Big statement as well, that. We always talk about this. First out, always nice to make a big statement. You've obviously done the weight well. And maybe that, Nick, what you just said, played on her mind from previous times.
Yeah, absolutely. And these guys who are faced on, these will all be bang on weight. There's no issues here whatsoever. But of course, as great as this card is, it's all about
Next
the
to
big
the
boys.
scale, Daniel Pineda.
Quite importantly, we want to see what DC's weight is. I think that's going to be critical in the main event.
Daniel Pineda making his way.
Coming back to the UFC.
Go on, Dan, as you were saying.
He's coming back to the UFC, this guy. He had a run in the UFC previously and stepped away and was fighting in the PFL. A good fighter, but has had some drug testing confusion. He's now back in the UFC.
For Daniel Pineda.
146.
146 for Pineda. Yeah, he's taking on Herbert Burns in the featherweight contest. This fight has actually been bumped up to the main card off the back of Kutabala and Kalaev falling off. But you're right to bring that up there, Dan. In the PFL, he had 2 knockout victories on the same night, and then they were overturned because of obviously him failing drug tests. But he's back in the UFC. Big opportunity for him against Herbert Burns in that featherweight contest on the main card.
Next to the scale, Verna Jandiroba.
Verna Jandiroba taking on Felice Herrig in the women's strawweight contest.
This would be a good fight. This would be an exciting one. But both of these ladies, they're very scrappy, take a lot of risks in their striking exchanges. And in their scrambling exchanges, they both have enough tenacity, but also enough holes in their game to make it quite chaotic. I'm expecting this one to be quite a live wire from the first round.
Official weight 115.5 for Verna Jandiroba.
That's it. If you don't need to take that extra half off, what's the point, when it's not a championship? You keep them cornflakes on, kid. Obviously, had a little bit of breakfast this morning. That's what we like to see.
Weighing with your mask on.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. That extra half pound.
It's always interesting to see who gets on the scales early, who's in line and ready to step on the scale.
TJ Brown up next, taking on Danny Chavez. Chavez, if I'm not mistaken, is actually making his UFC debut in this fight. TJ Brown.
Lost his debut.
Yeah, featherweight contest.
Brown lost his debut. He lost against Jordan Griffin in February, but did have a good run, and he won on Dana White's Contender Series to get the opportunity, so we'll want to right that wrong big time. Oh,
what's going on here? Oh, over. Did he say 146 and 3/4 there? I thought he heard. So he's over by 3/4 of a pound, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, take his mask and his pants off. It'll be fine. take your mask and your pants off and go for a run around the arena.
Yeah. I think he's thinking of doing that, isn't he?
Yeah, of course.
He's hanging on.
He's got to make weight to do something. Oh, hello. We've upgraded from the towel.
There you go, eh? It's a telephone box now, boys. There you go.
Changing cubicle. You want that when you get down the coast, Nick. You pop up and get your trunks changed in that.
No, he goes in as TJ Brown and reappears as Stipe Miocic. Ta-da! Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be Stipe Miocic. Get them arms up.
$146.5. Them kecks weren't heavy enough. Get the mask off. Oh, why can't he take his mask off?
146.5. The weight for TJ Brown.
Interesting.
What's it?
What else is he taking off?
Exactly.
What else has he got to take off? Oh, he's stuck in the curtain.
Right. I thought it was some type of lavatory there. I thought you were removing weight another way.
That's the social distancing towel, is it?
Interesting that, Dan, because he must have been on the scales in the back and hit weight or in his room or whatever it may be, because he wouldn't be this confident to come down at this particular time of the day and be weighing in fourth if he didn't think he was going to miss weight.
No. I mean, they would have checked his weight and his hydration and all that backstage before he came out. But unfortunately, the scales backstage aren't the official scales. I mean, they try and match them as close as they can.
Next
but
to the scale,
as you guys
know,
all the boxing weigh-ins, you have to make sure that their scales are on a solid platform. Yeah. And we've got Chito Vera.
Here's your boy, Chito Vera, obviously in the co-main event at bantamweight against Sean O'Malley. He's really impressed all this week on Embedded. He's looked $1 million, toe to toe. It's going to be a cracking fight, this.
Official weight 136 for Marlon Vera.
There you go. No messing about. Well,
he fancies this fight, Dan. He really fancies it. He realizes, listen, everyone thinks it's the Sugar Sean show and it's all about him on the main, co-main event to a big trilogy heavyweight title fight. All the focus been on O'Malley. I think Vera's just loving every second of it because he knows he can take this momentum and run with it and get a big fight or even a rematch on the back of this. So I think Vera, as the older statesman, when the call came in for O'Malley as the co-main event, he must have been doing backflips.
Next to the scale, John Dodson.
Here he is.
Big opportunity for
now, these guys are going to be kicking off the main card. John Dodson taking on Mirab Dvalishvili. I think we described this on our open match show preview, that it'd be like two wasps in a jam jar. These lads are going at it. It'll be rapid. Do not blink, because
two squirrels chasing up a tree.
All over the place.
Speed that both of these guys move at is ridiculous. And the thing is, Mirab Dvalishvili is a really aggressive wrestler. He's going to have to try and get his hands on Dodson.
No messing.
136, the official weight for John Dodson.
That's a bantamweight, of course. John Dodson taking on Mirab Dvalishvili. And Dvalishvili, in his last 15-minute fight, Dan, smashing records for fun. I think it was 13 takedowns, up and down.
Yeah. Constantly. But it's going to be that same kind of fight with Dodson because he's not
Kamaka.
Yeah.
I mean, like Dodson's going to be scrambling back to his feet. He's going to be difficult to get a hold of. You're going to have to shoot and reshoot and keep changing your technique. It's going to be a difficult one for Rab to finish the takedown on.
Kai Kamaka working in now.
$145.5, the official weight for Kai Kamaka.
Another guy making his UFC debut, unbeaten in the last 3 years, had a real good run, was a solid contender in the Bellator before he came over. I think he fought in LFA last time out, Legacy, but looking to make a big statement. Is that the curtain, Jake and Adam? Is that the first fight on, is it?
Yeah, it's an addition after Ankalaev and Kutalaba fell off.
It's a shame that. It's been remade though, hasn't it, already? It's been rebooked.
Yeah,
next to the scale,
next week, I think, 29th.
Is that when it is?
You've actually picked this one, Nick. Pichel against Jim Miller.
Yeah.
Is your one to watch. This is obviously at the end of the prelims. This is the one just before we get into the main card at lightweight. Tell us why you've picked this one as a one to watch.
Because both these guys are practically 40 years of age and absolute veterans. And if Cobra has proved anything, it's that us 40-somethings are absolutely dominating the game right now. So that's why I think this fight's going to be lit. And this is my tip for fight of the night.
Official weight 156 for Vince Pichel.
Looks well. Looks well indeed.
Pichel.
You know that Jim Miller's going to bring it.
Of course. And how many times has he been in there before, Jim Miller? 24 times, is it?
I think it's more than that, Dan. I think it's about 30 times, yeah. 33 times or something now.
Crazy. Imagine how comfortable you would feel making the walk to the octagon if you'd done it that many times.
Yeah. Like walking the shower.
Next to the scale, Tony Kelly.
Tony Kelly. Just a quick.
Surprising we've not had the heavyweights out first. I wonder if they were giving all the people weight cutting a chance to get on the scales before they came down.
Yeah. They're at breakfast, mate. They're at breakfast. They're enjoying themselves. They don't have to do any of this nonsense. For people that are just joining our stream, by the way, you're more than welcome to join the debate. If you've got any questions, if you want to throw anything Dan's way, you're more than welcome to do so via Twitter. Use the hashtag OpenMat, and you can join in the sections on the comments on YouTube and Facebook, wherever you are deciding to watch this stream.
145.5, the official weight for Tony Kelly.
Tony Kelly.
This guy's interesting. A 6-fight novice, 5-1 in his career. Came to MMA pretty late. Kind of had it in and out. Takes 2 years out, has a year out. And you'd think, why is a 6-fight novice, age 33, getting into the UFC? I'll tell you why. He's one of the main sparring partners of the team over at AKA. They obviously know the caliber's there. The pedigree's there. So don't be put off by the fact he's only had 6 fights. This guy knows how it's done.
Now, earlier on, obviously, Verna Jandiroba weighed in at 115.5. This is the lady that she's due to fight against in the women's strawweight division, Felice Herring, making her way in a moment or two. Interesting character, Felice, isn't she, Dan?
To say the least.
Yeah, she's a show woman. She likes to put on a performance. I mean, she always comes in great shape. She's always tenacious, but she loves the spotlight. She loves being on the scales for a start.
116, the official weight for Felice Herring.
There you go.
My mohawk was never long enough to do that little flick before I did the flicks. I'll have to work on that for next time.
Oh,
I tell you, that's a scrap.
That is absolutely. Felice Herring's always in good scraps, and she's a one-woman marketing machine. She used to be on the phone when I was working at the magazine. She was on the phone every month wanting to be covered, featured,
next
photo
to the scale,
shoots.
Parker
you
Porter.
name it. She wanted to do it. So she gets the game. She understands the business, and she's a bit of a mainstay as well of female MMA.
To the early prelims now. Parker Porter's just about to make his way to the scales.
Here we go.
Contest.
The big boys. See this guy? This guy fought John Jones, believe it or not. John Jones' 3rd or 4th fight they fought in New York. Look at the size of him.
264.5, the official weight
for
Parker
He's been
Porter.
cutting. 264.5. He's obviously just been for a run this morning to get a little bit of sweat out. But they get us underway on the early prelims, him and Chris Dokas in the heavyweight division.
Interesting fight that, because that Porter, he's been around for like 20 years.
Next to the scale, Sean
He's been a pro
O'Malley.
for about 3 years, so experience versus a bit of youth. Here he is. Here's the show himself.
Marlon Vera's already weighed in, just in case you're just joining us. He weighed in at 136. Here's the other half of that co-main contest at bantamweight.
136, the official weight for Sean O'Malley.
There you go. The co-main event is official. Sean O'Malley there. You can see with the colouring of his hair, with the yellow, the blue, and the red. He says it's an Ecuadorian flag, playing on obviously Chito Vera's heritage. A little bit of psychological warfare there, Dan. You like a little bit
Next
of that,
to the scale, Chris Dawkins.
Yeah. He needs Chito Vera running at him. He needs Chito Vera taking risks and putting his chin on the line. That's the kind of style that Chito likes anyway. But a little bit of encouragement would go a long way for O'Malley. Yeah. He's playing a smart game here. He's going to get an aggressive Chito Vera that's going to be much easier to hit.
Chris Dawkins now on the scales. He's the other guy that's fighting Parker Porter. getting us underway on the early prelims.
Don't blink. Do not blink.
Big lads, these lads.
241, the official weight for Chris Dawkins.
So Chris Dawkins in at 241, Parker Porter in at 265. There's a couple of stone between these lads.
A little bit. If it makes a difference in punching power, that's when we care though. We've seen you go into heavyweights with the footwork having more success recently though. So I'm always and look at the two guys in the main event. If they both weigh over 240, I'd be surprised. You know, these lighter heavyweights, there's a lot to be said for agility.
Yep. Couple of tweets coming in via the BT Sport Twitter feed. Do keep them coming. Hashtag Open Mat. Little bit of a point there. O'Malley is the only one that can match McGregor's level of hype and level of stardom in the UFC. Would you go along with that, Dan? The only one? I think there's some top class athletes out there that have got that ability to rock the mic, but he has got something very unique about him, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, McGregor took the sport by storm, and he changed a lot of things within the sport. You know, the way that people view themselves and, you know, how they market themselves and all those kind of things. But like the next person that is as successful as McGregor probably won't be like McGregor. Mm-hmm. You know, like Masvidal was very different to McGregor, but very successful, and he's very different in a lot of ways. He's very kind of laid back, very relaxed. You know, it's a different kind of energy. Sean O'Malley's different again. You know, he attracts a different kind of audience. I don't know. I think, you know, if we constantly keep searching for the next Conor McGregor, we might just find the McGregor clone, and they're never going to fill his shoes. You know, we need to let people be their own stars sometimes.
Just in case you are just joining us on this live stream on BT Sport YouTube and Facebook channel, we're still waiting for the heavyweight main event. Both guys not weighed in as of yet. Neither has JDS or Jorginho Rosenstruik. We're not envisaging any problems there because they're heavyweights and they should comfortably be under the 265. But we're still waiting for Herbert Burns and Merab Dvalishvili to complete that main card. Jim Miller's still to weigh in, as is Danny Chavez. Livia Renata Souza also still to come our way. But we've had a little bit of an interesting one, I suppose, with TJ Brown, who obviously weighed in nice and early. He thought that he was on weight. Weighed in at 146 3/4, took his kecks off 146 1/2. Be interesting to see what happens there, whether we see him again or not, and whether he is contesting the scales in his room, the scales in the back, the scales on the front. Something somewhere is matching up. So I've no doubt we will hear a little bit more on that as these hours progress. But thank you very much for joining us here on the BT Sport UFC 252 live stream. And as you can see there's loads of little bits of questions coming in from people watching in all different ways, and you're more than welcome to come and join us on that. What is your under-the-radar fight for this card? Matt Bailey getting involved. Nick, go on, mate. I'll let you go first on that one. What do you reckon? Your under-the-radar fight for this card. What are you looking out for?
You know, I'm going to go with those two heavyweights. I think it'll be funny. I think it'll be crazy on the early prelims.
It'll be funny. He's not a stand-up comedy show.
They're both making their UFC debut. They both just swing for the fences. As we've just seen, they're both big units. So that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. But obviously, I've got to go on to the main card itself. I think on the main card, there's so many eyeballs on the heavyweight trilogy fight.
Next to the scale, Merab Dvalishvili.
But JDS Rosenstruck, that is not going the distance. There's too much history there. There's too much going on. There's too many narratives playing out behind the scenes. One of them getting chinned.
I like it. Dan, I'll come to you in a minute once we've seen Merab weigh in. Obviously, Dvalishvili taking on John Dodson. This one gets the main card underway. It's at bantamweight. And as I said a moment or two ago, Merab just loves to break his own record for the amount of takedowns in a fight. Last time out, over 15 minutes, 13 takedowns. Ridiculous energy and work rate.
Yeah, Merab. Official weight, 136 for Merab Dvalishvili.
There you go. I said 2 wasps in a jam jar. That's what you're going to be getting tomorrow night. It's going to be action-packed. Dan, is that the one that you're looking at as your under-the-radar fight?
Yeah, it's certainly one of them. I mean, I think people know what to expect from those two guys anyway, especially with John Dodson, who's been around for a long time. I think, the onus is going to be on Dvalishvili to cover distance because Dodson's not going to engage willingly. He's going to want to pot shot and move, be on his toes. So, I think that's going to be a difficult, challenging fight for Dvalishvili. I've said it before. I think the Jandiroba Herrig fight is going to be. It's just going to be scrappy. There's going to be a bit of standoff, and then they're just going to go at it. And the more they land on each other, the more aggressive they're going to get. I can just picture it in my head because I know how they both fight, and that's that's the fun one to watch. Don't go and put the kettle on while that one's on. You want to sit down ready for that.
Last one on the prelims, taking on Vince Pichel, who's already weighed in. He came in nice at 156. Is Jim Miller. You can see him there just stripping down, putting the mask on. Don't envisage any problems here, but here's Jim. Let's see what he's weighing.
Official weight 156 for Jim Miller.
There you go. Everything nice and spicy. You know that's going to be a whole lot of fun, Nick.
I think, do you know what? I've just had a quick look then. And if I can't count, but hopefully I counted then. He's had 36 UFC fights prior to this one. This is his 37th UFC fight. That is more UFC fights than most MMA fighters have in their entire career. He's had more fights just inside the UFC, inside the octagon. An absolute older statesman of the sport. So much respect for him. And still doing it on the biggest stage, Dan. Still getting big wins against good, hungry, young fighters coming through who think, Jim Miller, amazing scalp, and he just turns it round on them. All with Lyme's disease as well.
Yeah, it's so impressive that what he's been able to put together as a career. And 36. I mean, is that not more fights than the main and co-main event have had total? It's like that. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of hours in the gym. That's a lot of training camps. That's a lot of walking out into an arena to walk to the octagon, which is different to walk into any other arena in the world, in my opinion. That's like we were saying earlier. It must be so comfortable for Jim Miller to do that. But what that allows him to do is it focuses on the smaller parts of his game, the little progressions that he makes between fights. I think we see that from other guys as well. The other one that springs to mind is Joe Lozon. He's so comfortable in there now. You see little developments in his game. You see a thought process while he's in there. It's a mindset that many fighters won't ever reach, to be that comfortable in the octagon under those lights. And I think that we see the benefit in Jim Miller's game when he performs.
Don't know if you can see that, Nick, but you've got a question on screen there. Bradley's coming to you. He wants to know if DC beats Stipe, is he really the GOAT at heavyweight? And he actually points it right at you. I'm coming to you, Petey.
You, Nick.
Listen, I think when we go back to when we did our top 10 rankings of the greatest heavyweights, I think both myself and Dan, we had them at 9 and 10. I think, Dan, didn't we, in the all-time standings? But I am also a big advocate of if you've got to beat the man to become the man. And right now I've got Stipe at number 1, and even though I've got DC at 9, I think a win over Stipe is certainly a conclusive win as well if he was to able to get that job done. I think that would be absolutely huge in terms of DC's own legacy, because there is still question marks about the light heavyweight reign. There is now a question mark about the heavyweight reign, just because Stipe said, I didn't take him seriously. I didn't think he had that much power. And then Stipe managed to get revenge in the second fight. So I think there's a lot on the line here for DC. But yeah, listen, if DC knocks out Stipe Miocic on Sunday morning, he's beat the man, in my opinion. So you've got to put him at the top of that
list.
Next
to the scale, Lavinia Souza.
I hope that was brute honesty enough.
I think it was.
That's what we expect from you.
115.5, the official weight for Lavinia Souza.
Lavinia Renata Souza taking on Ashley Yoder. This is the one that gets us underway on the prelims. Both women making the exact same weight. Should be a good one to get us underway.
Yeah, 2 former champions outside of the UFC as well, just high level. That's the best thing about the women at the moment. The strength and depth may not be there like the men's weight divisions, but what we're finding is all these girls that are getting into the UFC, when you look at their records, they've all been champions elsewhere. It really is the creme de la creme from around the world. And I'm so excited about the women's weight divisions, because I think in 5 or 6 years' time, the talent pool is just going to be absolutely ridiculous, because they're all just lacking one thing. Pretty much all beneath the champions in the UFC, the rest of the fields are lacking one thing: experience. But once that experience comes in, man, I think the level's just going to jump up a notch.
Speak about experience. Just
Next
in case you are just joining us.
Rosenstruik.
Oh, I was just about to have a go then. The heavyweights were keeping us waiting. The buffing must have been wicked at the Apex. That's what I was about to say. But Rozenstruik's finished. He's ready to come and join us. And obviously, coming off the back of that obliteration against Francis Ngannou, it'd be interesting to see how he performs tomorrow. Let's get his weight.
Official weight 254 for Jair Rozenstruik.
Boom.
Dan, it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches this fight tomorrow, and as well how JDS approaches it, because we know that Rozenstruik's a sensational kickboxer. He's relatively new to the world of mixed martial arts, whereas JDS, when it comes to MMA, he was probably there when it was all invented.
Well, yeah, this is it. I mean, a lot of times JDS comes into the octagon as the boxer that's defending takedowns and trying to keep it on the feet. That's been his career, especially with his fights against Kane. But in this fight, he's the MMA fighter. Rozenstruik has looked incredible in the striking ranges. From the first bell to the very last bell, he's dangerous. But he has also looked out of place when he's been on his back. He was taken down in his first fight against Albini, and then in his fight against Alistair Overeem, he was controlled against the fence and on the floor as well. I feel like if JDS is smart here, he's gonna try and force him to grapple a little bit, even if it's just to keep that narrative in his mind to maybe open up some of his strikes. Like what you've got to think is there's a deficit in JDS's game because he's not really a kickboxer. I mean, I know he's got kick knockouts. I mean, we think back to the Mark Hunt spinning kick knockout, but one of the reasons why he landed that is because he doesn't tend to land those kind of kicks, and there was a surprise element. Whereas Rozenstruik's a kickboxer. That doubles the amount of weapons that he's got when he's on the feet, and that's not including elbows and knees as well. So if JDS puts the question in his mind that there might be a shot, it might just make him a little hesitant enough to be able to create a boxing match for himself. He's just got to be smart about it, and I think that's where experience comes in for him.
I agree with you, though, Nick, with what you said about that fight. I don't want to give it the kiss of death, but nobody's seeing the final bell here, is there?
No.
It's not going 15 minutes.
Absolutely no chance. And, I kind of feel for JDS a little bit here. I feel like he's been fed to the wolves. I think Rozenstruik, take away that 20 seconds nightmare against Ngannou. He's been faultless. He's got big wins. That Overeem knockout was absolutely huge. Deep in the fight as well. So it proves he carries good strength and good stamina to be able to knock people out late on. But I feel like, two guys from the same camp over at ATT. Dos Santos has turned up in Vegas with one of his old Brazilian coaches. The ATT team have stayed with Rozenstruik. And listen, JDS is a great guy, and he was probably part of that conversation. But I just feel like there's a bit of a changing of the guard here in terms of heavyweights. And I always say it, losing's a habit. JDS hasn't had his arm raised in, 18 months? He's had 2 huge, big knockouts. I've seen a couple of tweets there from a couple of people watching the show. I've got to agree. I think JDS right now, for me, his chin's a little bit suspect. He's deep in his career, and I think this is a perfect fight for Rozenstruik to get his own title aspirations back on track.
Thank you very much for joining us on this stream, whether you're watching it on YouTube or whether you're watching it on Facebook. As you can see, there are little questions popping up on the screen, and they're all coming from people watching this. So if you've got something that you want to throw Dan's way, then you're more than welcome to do so. Just put the hashtag OpenMat if you're doing it via Twitter, or just drop your question or comment in the YouTube and Facebook comments box. Still waiting for Stipe Miocic, the champion, and Daniel Cormier to weigh in. We haven't seen them as of yet. We haven't seen Junior Dos Santos as well. Herbert Burns as well. Still waiting for him. That will complete the main card. Everybody else in and on weight. The only discrepancy that we've seen was TJ Brown, who missed weight by half a pound. A little bit of a weird one, that one, early doors in the featherweight contest with Danny Chavez. Danny Chavez, by the way, hasn't weighed in as of yet, and he's the only one on the prelims, if I'm not mistaken, that we're still waiting for. Don't forget, this all goes down in the early hours of the morning on BT Sport. 1 o'clock, the prelims get underway for you, and then 3 o'clock, that main card, all culminating with the heavyweight championship of the world, the trilogy between Stipe and DC, and that's what we're all giddy for, Big trilogies where 2 guys coming in there. It's not contentious. I mean, in the world of boxing, we've seen a few of those recently, haven't we? Where somebody gets a draw and then the second fight's a bit more conclusive. These couldn't have had 2 more conclusive fights. 2 knockouts, both coming into this final fight. One guy says that he's retiring. Who knows what the other guy's going to be doing after fighting the pandemic on the front line in Cleveland, Ohio. Who knows how this is going to go down, but it should be an absolute cracker, and you can get it on BT Sport. Just a quick one on Sean O'Malley, Dan, because we've seen him weigh in, bang on, as was Chito Vera, and a lot of people are obviously on the hype train for Sean O'Malley. I am most certainly one of those characters. The bantamweight division is really, really interesting. We've seen that Cody's gone down to take on Figueiredo at flyweight for that championship belt. We know that Sandhagen and Moraes are matched up. We're all sat here going, well, when are they going to announce Aljamain Sterling's title shot? When's that going to come? Surely, even Aljo's probably watching this right now going, come on, lads, give us a little bit of a big up here. Surely it's me next. Why are they waiting? Is it as obvious as maybe they're waiting to see what happens this weekend?
Yeah, quite possibly. But even so, I think, even if, say, for example, Sean O'Malley comes through this weekend and looks fantastic, I still think it's too early to jump him ahead of Aljamain Sterling. I mean, Sterling's there. Sterling's like in that spot ready to go. There's no reason for him not to get the next title shot. I don't know, to be honest. I'm not sure what it is. Perhaps it's waiting on Sterling to get that point where he's so angry that he starts really calling for the fight. And then, that's when you've got something to market. He is a quietly spoken individual. He's always smiling. He's a very likable individual. But, unfortunately, that doesn't really get you fights. I think sometimes you need a bit of anger and a bit of animosity. And I mean, I always think back to Gegard Mousasi. I know he's no longer with the UFC, but there was a point towards the end of his career where he's like, what is going on? Like, where is my respect? Like, I think sometimes fighters, when they get pushed to that stage, it brings an extra 5% out of them, and it might be that extra 5% that Aljamain Sterling needs. I mean, everybody in this division is tough. He's definitely way ahead of everybody else in the division, though, as far as the title shot goes.
On the fight itself, Nick, are a lot of fans maybe overlooking Chito Vera and what he brings? I mean, this is a guy that doesn't get knocked out.
Exactly, he's never been knocked out. So yeah, absolutely, of course, people are overlooking him because we're also excited about Sean O'Malley and this, freight train run that he's on at the moment. Since his suspension, since he came back, he's had 2 wins, but 2 absolutely magnificent first round stoppage performances. So you've got to get excited about someone like that because he works both off inside the octagon and outside the octagon as well. And don't be surprised if Sean O'Malley takes this in control of his own hands. If he can get a win over Vera, and again, I'm like you, I maintain it. Vera's absolutely another huge step up on top of Eddie Wineland. But if he can get a win, if he can get a big win as well, a significant win, a statement performance like he has done last 2 fights, don't be surprised if Sean O'Malley, he's an intelligent kid. I think he might go, right, Petr Yan's gone back to Russia with the belt. Me and Aljo, make me and Aljo final eliminator. And you know what? The momentum's there. I think Dana might just go, you know what? Okay, we're here. We haven't got to try and get him Petr Yan back into the country. We know he's in Russia now with the belt, but he'll want to go to Thailand to do his training camp. How long's that going to take? Then we've got to get him back over here. Why not? Why not just do an eliminator with Aljo, the hottest man in the division, Sean O'Malley? Garbrandt took himself away from that by accepting the flyweight title fight now. If I was Sean O'Malley, and don't be surprised if he doesn't, people are making these comparisons with Conor, and we never knew what Conor was going to do next, and we never knew Conor was going to call for next, but he had the star power to make those fights happen. And I tell you what, Aljamain Sterling would love to be in the co-main event of the trilogy fight for the heavyweight title. So don't be surprised if O'Malley rocks that mic as usual on Sunday morning.
Dan, in the O'Malley-Vera fight, does the 25-foot octagon play any part?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, it's going to be easier for Vera to cut the space down and to make it more claustrophobic for O'Malley. But then what we've got to bear in mind is, that octagon is very, very familiar to O'Malley. I mean, the majority of his work's been, I'm not even sure he's fought in the full-size octagon, if I remember right. The majority of the time he's in the smaller octagon, cutting those angles against the fence, forcing people to walk onto stuff. It might actually suit his game, to be honest, because he relies on those angle changes to catch people across their chin. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be Chito Vera trying to walk him down. And obviously, the less space in the octagon, the easier it is to do that. But, if walking forward is what O'Malley wants him to do and keep turning onto angles, then those smaller fence panels will make a difference. Yeah. I'm interested to see it, but I do feel like O'Malley's so comfortable in that octagon because he's not. I don't think he's had experience in the larger octagon. It does make a difference, I feel, for footwork.
If you want to get involved with the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so. Use the hashtag OpenMatt on Twitter and just drop your comments in the section on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you're watching this stream. We're still waiting for Stipe Miocic, the heavyweight champion, and Daniel Cormier to weigh in. as we are waiting for Junior Dos Santos and Herbert Burns. That will complete your main card. And then Danny Chavez on the prelims as well, we are waiting for. Everybody else in on weight, bar TJ Brown, who missed it by half a pound. Interesting to hear the fallout of that. But if you want to join the conversation, you're more than welcome to do so. You can see there's a poll on our Twitter feed right now. And I kind of expected that. I kind of expected a lot of people who were into what we do and follow the UFC to have this neck and neck. I don't think there is an outright favourite. If you look at the bookies, they're both neck and neck. You're going to get even money on both of these guys going into it. And I think that comes down from the conclusivity of the first two fights. One guy's not one guy out. One guy's not the other guy out. And people can't really pick as to where this one's going to go.
Yeah, and I think, with the stats being so close, I think it reflects on not only how close these fighters are matched to one another, but also the fact that DC has won the majority of the time they've spent in the octagon. I mean, he's only just won, but he has just won the majority of the time. I think in that first fight, Miocic was doing good things early on. He just got static when he started getting hit with those leg kicks and was closed down into the clinch. But he was still doing good stuff. He just got overzealous. Second time around, I feel like he was doing good things at the start of each round. First minute, he looked good. First minute of the second round, he looked good. Then 30 seconds of the third, he looked good. Like, he's winning portions of the rounds. He even got a takedown against DC. Like, there's certainly an easy argument to make for why Miocic wins this fight, but it's just as easy to make one for DC as well, if not easier. And that's where I think, people are divided right down the line. And also why I think that those might be reflective of a really hard-fought 5-round decision in this trilogy match.
Nick, off the back of the way that Stipe changed the momentum of that second fight and the way that he did it, he's got to start the exact same way, hasn't he? Hit that body straight away.
You would think so. Obviously against any fighter that's fleshy, you'd think that would be the obvious point anyway. Look soft around the middle. Let's go to the midsection. It's never something that we'd seen with Cormier exposed before, but it was massively exposed in the second fight. So yeah, you'd think at least early on, you'd throw a few kicks to the body maybe. If not left hooks, if you can't get close enough, get a few kicks into the midsection, see how DC responds. But the issue there, of course, is that you're opening yourself up for takedowns from DC then as well, you see. Getting too close or throwing body kicks. That's probably what DC's bread and butter is. He wants to take you down. He wants to grind you on the back. So it's a tough one for Miocic because it's whether you take that risk early on, whether you get through a few rounds like he did in the second fight and then bring that game plan in. You want to show your cards a little bit too soon because, as I say, I can't see this one going the same as the first fight. I can't see it going in the first round. I think it will go into the championship rounds, if not to the judges' decisions. So I truly believe both these guys may have to feel this fight out a little bit. And I think they might change tactics as Stipe did in the second fight 2 or 3 times, both of them, throughout the duration of it. That's why it's so fascinating because there's so many ways both can win. There's so many ways both can lose. And that's why in terms of being a rubber match, this one probably caps them all in terms of anticipation and excitement because it's for the big one, isn't it? It's for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Let's play out some narratives as we're waiting for both these guys, Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier, to weigh in here at the Apex for UFC 252. I managed to catch up with both of these guys earlier on this week, and I'll start with DC because everybody knows he said that this is his retirement fight. He wants to go out as heavyweight champion. He wants to put the gloves in the middle of the octagon and walk away as the champ. But you know full well that if he does this in style at the weekend, Uncle Dana will have a nice big fat checkbook ready for him to say, listen, do you fancy that trilogy with John Jones? And I put that to DC. He said no. At this moment in time, not at all. But then I pressed him a little bit and then he came back down and he went, well, maybe 95% no. What do you reckon? Dan, you first of all. Is this the last ride? Or do you think he can be tempted for that trilogy at heavyweight with John Jones?
I think it depends on how good he feels in this fight this weekend and how he performs. But I don't think so. I mean, the thing is, it's such a risk, Like, he's going into this fight with Miocic, knowing full well that he beat him the first time around and knowing that he was beating him consistently in the second fight. He can't say the same thing with John Jones, no matter how you look at those circumstances and all of the details around, both the fights. I just feel like John Jones was better than him, and I feel like another fight against John Jones doesn't really prove anything more. And I think Stipe is a much easier gamble for your last big fight. I mean, this is the heavyweight title at the end of the day, and DC's doing it before John Jones had the opportunity to. So DC stepping up and grabbing the heavyweight title, winning it twice, and then retiring. I think that is for, I mean, perhaps for his psychological health, probably the safest thing for him to do. Because, you know, after this fight, if he beats Stipe and he's got the heavyweight belt, and then Jones comes up for the trilogy match with those two boys and takes it off him, how does DC retire then? That's like opening a whole new can of worms that I don't think he really wants to do at this stage.
Nick, if he is successful, he retires, he hangs the belt up, it becomes vacant. Who do you want to see fighting for it?
Yeah, good question. And to be honest, I think if Stipe were to lose, DC were to win, I think Stipe would probably take a little bit of time away from the sport. Obviously, the manner of defeat probably comes into it, but I would like to see Stipe take a little bit of a backward step because I would like to open it up. I would like to see, you know, the rest of the field step forward. Of course, Ngannou would be a huge fight. Rosenstruck or Junior Dos Santos can put their names in the frame with a big performance here. Curtis Blades is chomping at the bit and has looked very good at what he does inside that heavyweight octagon. But of course, you know me, I ain't gonna lie, I'm a John Bones Jones fanboy, man. I always have been. I believe he's the best natural talent we've ever seen in the sport. I want Johnny Bones to move up to heavyweight. I want him to become heavyweight champion. So then I can say, well, I told you Johnny Bones Jones was the best who's ever done it, but he needs to do that. He needs that heavyweight title to add to his legacy, so I can now argue against George St. Pierre and whoever else. So I want to see John Bones Jones move up to heavyweight, and I'd put him straight in for the vacant title shot. Absolutely.
Against?
Any of the others. Rosenstruck.
Jones against Ngannou. Is that what you want?
Yeah, line them up, man. All on the same night. Blades, Ngannou, Rosenstruck. You know, line them up. Absolutely. This is Johnny Bones Jones. And Johnny Bones Jones, who's under threat, who's nervous, who's anxious, who actually has the fear factor of thinking, the guy across the octagon from me has a trait better than me in terms of the heavyweights. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's naturally a heavyweight, and I'm not. The fear factor, John Jones, oof, that's the very best John Jones. And I want to see that guy back inside the octagon.
Dan, we're living in that time, aren't we, where once upon a time, it wasn't essential to move up or down in weight to become a multi-weight world champion. But now, obviously, since McGregor did it and a few others are starting to do it, we're seeing Cody go down in weight, aren't we, to attempt to become that multi-weight world champion in the flyweight division. It's become a bit of an essential part of someone's legacy.
Next
and
to the
as
scale,
Nick just said
half of our main event, Stipe.
Here we go. I'll pause there for a
Miocic.
second. Here's the champ, Stipe Miocic.
Here we go.
Let's see where he's at. Talk well all week, look calm all week, look good all week. The energy's been there. Obviously been enjoying a little bit of a lie-in this morning. Maybe had a bit of breakfast before he hits the scales. The champ, Stipe Miocic, about to weigh in for the trilogy, the cherry on top of the cake at UFC 252.
And digging his COVID haircut as well. He's gone for the full quiff these days, hasn't he?
Like you.
Like
Look at him. He looks $1 million as well. Looks in an unbelievable shape.
me.
Yeah, all right.
He does. He looks great. He looks great.
Official weight 233 for Stipe Miocic.
Athletic, looks good.
Looks great.
Not a pick on him. Dan, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think he looks in great shape. I think he knows what's at stake in this fight, and I think he's trained his conditioning to try and meet the level that he knows that DC can put out. But something that always come to mind when it comes to Stipe as well, seeing him standing on the scales on that camera angle just there, like if you didn't know who he was, he could be a middleweight.
Yeah.
He doesn't look out of proportion in any way. Like you see DC step on the scales, no matter what weight class he's in, he's kind of heavy for that weight class. It's easy to guess he's a heavyweight. Yeah. Whereas like Miocic, you could scale him down to a featherweight and he would still look the same. Like physiologically, he's very well balanced for this weight class. Yeah. I just feel like that's got to be a natural advantage. It's the same as with John Jones, which is why he's so interesting coming up to heavyweight. Because like you look at John Jones and you think to yourself, he has the frame to be able to carry much more muscle mass than he already is. Like I think if Miocic beats Daniel Cormier, John Jones Miocic is the fight to make. That is absolutely the fight to make. I think that these guys that are well proportioned in their weight class are the ones that have the best advantage. Like DC is impressive because he's managed to build a style around his physicality. Yeah. I think if you were trying to recruit if you were trying to make an ideal fighter, you wouldn't say DC was the ideal heavyweight physique. Whereas I would probably say that about Miocic.
On the weight thing that I was just about to talk about with John Jones, how important is it for his legacy that he does make that move to heavyweight?
I think it's pretty important, especially because it is light heavyweight and because he's cutting from the heavyweight division into light heavyweight. I mean, John Jones was probably walking around at heavier than Stipe Miocic weighed in today when he's fighting at 205. Yeah. Hell, Anthony Johnson used to walk around heavier than Stipe Miocic when he was fighting at welterweight. So you can imagine John Jones is going to be 230, 240 when he's beginning training camp. Basically, you're looking at John Jones without a weight cut. Yeah. And I think that winning a belt in the UFC is incredibly difficult. Defending a belt in the UFC is really, really difficult. But unfortunately, you hit a ceiling there unless you step into a different weight class, or unless you can coach someone to come into your weight class from a different one. I still don't think that holds the same kind of credence, though. Like TJ Dillashaw moving down a weight class didn't do anything for me as far as anybody else's legacy other than his. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it did nothing for Henry Cejudo, did it? Really?
No, that's. I mean, I think Cejudo's impressed when he went up a weight class and fought there. When he became a 2-weight champ, not beating a champ from another weight class. It's not even quite as impressive. Yeah. I think John Jones, in order to really solidify himself as the greatest of all time, in this day and age, you've got to hold 2 belts, 2 weight classes. And if you can do that simultaneously, and heavyweight and light heavyweight for John Jones, he's more than capable of doing it.
Nick, what do you want to see more? Because I know you're a big John Jones fan. Do you want to see John Jones fight in the likes of the Francis Ngannous and the Stipe Miocic of this world? Or do you want to see him in with Israel Adesanya?
Absolutely, Stipe Miocic. Absolutely, the heavyweight division. Rosenstruck, Ngannou, Curtis Blades. Maybe even if he can tempt him, DC. I want to see John Jones beat the best heavyweights of his era, like he beat the best light heavyweights of his era, and he beat the best light heavyweights of the previous era as well. That's why I put John Jones on this huge pedestal. People forget about the run he did when he first became champion, when he stepped in to fight Shogun, when he replaced Rashad Evans, and he won that belt in emphatic fashion. Then he just went on a murderer's row of Hall of Fame fighters, all former champions, and just knocked them all off one at a time. And then now I feel like he's overstayed his welcome a little bit in the light heavyweight division. It's like, John, you've cleared it out. There's nobody left. We're now giving opportunities to guys who are like 2 or 3 fights into the UFC career. We're trying to build up people like Johnny Walker. Oh, can he fight John Jones? Can he fight John Jones? Guys only had 2 or 3 fights and then he goes and get exposed anyway. I feel like the light heavyweight division, it's suffering because of John Jones's dominance, and it has done for a couple of years in a very similar way to Demetrius Johnson. I felt like the flyweight division suffered because DJ was just so much better than everybody else. I think right now John Jones's legacy is decided on the fact that when he's got to come to heavyweight, he's got to add that belt. Because right now I can argue till I'm blue in the face about what he's done, his career, his record, everything else, and everyone can always trump that now by going, yeah, but what about George St. Pierre, who came back after near 4 years absence, moved up a weight division and beat Michael Bisping? And you can argue till you're blue in your face of what level of champion Bisping was and everything else. I don't care. GSP came back and he beat the best middleweight on the planet in that day. So I think John Jones has got to move up to heavyweight. He's got to beat the best heavyweights of this era who are around right now. And then there's no more questions. Then there's no more arguments. There's no more debate. JBJ will go down as the GOAT.
There's also something else to bear in mind. I'm totally in agreement with you, Nick. Even if Jones stayed at light heavyweight and Adesanya moved up, if Jones won that fight, he would be expected to win. Definitely. If Adesanya won, it would be impressive because he moved up to face John Jones. Yes. Like if you look back to early days UFC, the reason that Royce Gracie was so incredible what he was doing wasn't because he was strangling guys that were smaller than him. Do you know what I mean? Yep. It's because he was taking on guys that had physiological advantages that he had to overcome with technique. Mm-hmm. The problem with John Jones in the light heavyweight division, and maybe one of the reasons why he's overstayed his welcome, is because it's quite clear that not only is he technically better, but he also has physiological advantages that are playing into it as well. I mean, he has the biggest wingspan in the UFC, bar none. Like now, Stefan Struve is estranged from the heavyweight division. John Jones has the longest reach in the UFC. Like, I don't even think it's necessarily as impressive for John Jones to move up to heavyweight as it would be for Adesanya to move up to light heavyweight. I mean, I'm just speculating here, but I think like physiologically, John Jones, he should be the heavyweight champ. I mean, he should be light heavyweight and heavyweight champ. Unfortunately, his stock is so high, it's kind of expected of him to be successful. Maybe that's why he doesn't want to go.
Yeah, I think so.
No, you and I were chatting to the great GSP the other day, and something that he said stuck in my mind. Like, the reason he was anxious to fight me is because I was a huge underdog. He had so much more to risk. Like, maybe the expectation of John Jones being the heavyweight champion is such a great expectation that it feels insurmountable to him, perhaps.
Good point. Good point. I'm just reading some of these texts that are coming in via our audience, with people obviously commenting on Stipe looking in incredible shape, of which we've been speaking about. We're still waiting for Daniel Cormier to weigh in. I think DC's waiting for everybody else to weigh in so he can be the cherry on top of the cake, innit? There's no way that he's missing weight for a heavyweight contest, let me tell you. We're still waiting for Junior Dos Santos. Herbert Burns is a little bit of a worry. We're 50 minutes into this right now. His opponent, Daniel Pineda, has already weighed in, hit 146. Where's Herbert Burns? Hopefully he's on weight, feeling good, and we get an absolute cracking fight in that featherweight contest, which has been bumped up to the main card. And we're also waiting for Danny Chavez. His opponent, TJ Brown, missed weight by half a pound a little earlier on. Everybody else has been through, hit the scales, and they're already rehydrating and getting ready for the action, which goes down in the early hours of Sunday morning on BT Sport. 1 o'clock prelims, 3 o'clock main card. So make sure you come and join us for that on BT Sport. Interesting one there. I'll come to you on this one, Nick. From Matt, I think it says Manny G. Moot. About Nathaniel Wood and Sean O'Malley. Listen, we're massive fans of Nathaniel. Huge fans of Nathaniel, obviously, with everything that he did in Cage Warriors and then bursting onto the scene in the UFC. Came up short against one of the guys fighting this weekend in John Dodson, but got back on the train at Fight Island recently. Sean O'Malley, 2 young guns looking for UFC superstardom. I mean, listen, I'm biased as a British fan. I would love to see that fight, but it just feels at this moment that maybe Sean O'Malley's superstardom just a touch ahead of him.
Yeah, I think, beating Eddie Wineland, and of course if he can beat Marlon Vera this weekend, I think he's on a little bit of a different course right now. I think Nathaniel, needs to keep that rehabilitation run, keep going. He needs to keep winning again. I think it'd be a great fight for him, but I think more than likely a fight against, a defeated Marlon Vera would be the perfect next fight for Nathaniel Wood. Get right on Sean O'Malley's coattails, if you like, call that fight out. But of course, O'Malley's got to come through Vera first. But I love the fight, as you say, from a British perspective. Absolutely. Anyone with any real aspirations of really moving through the weight divisions, they should all be looking, every bantamweight on the planet should be looking at Sean O'Malley going, that's the guy you're all talking about. I want to fight that guy. So, of course, I'm sure Nathaniel Wood would take that fight in a heartbeat. But you're right. I think Nathaniel Wood's, that loss to John Dodson really rocked him. Had he beat Dodson, then Nathaniel could well have been in the opposite corner with Sean O'Malley this weekend. But I think it's a great fight down the line, and I think Nathaniel Wood will absolutely have ambitions to fight Sean O'Malley, but he's in a pretty long queue at the moment.
And just based on the result of that fight, John Dodson fighting Merab Dvalishvili this weekend, Dan, he rolled the years back in that fight. He looked absolute mustard. The way that he was picking his shots, timing everything that Nathaniel was doing on that particular night. If that John Dodson turns up against Merab Dvalishvili, we could have a fight of the night.
Yeah, and what we saw in that fight, is he can take a shot as well and keep still keep throwing heavy and be dangerous. It's all about the footwork and the angles of John Dodson. He's so difficult to pin down, and then the more frustrated you get chasing after him, the more you leave yourself exposed to his speed and his striking power. I think John Dodson is always going to be problematic for people in these divisions. What he found in the flyweight division is that his ceiling was DJ. He pretty much beat everybody else, but his ceiling was the champion. He was always second best. In this, he's moved up the division to try and have a better run at this title. But he's still playing that role of kind of a spoiler for the new guys coming up. I mean, if he can stop Merab here, then he still puts himself in a position where he can start working towards the title.
Yeah.
Whereas, we're looking at guys like Merab, like Nick said a minute ago, if Nathaniel Woodhead had beaten O'Malley, he would have been fighting O'Malley. But O'Malley's not fighting Dodson. And there's a reason for that. It's because Dodson's a spoiler. He's a difficult person to beat for every single person on the roster. You know, and it can make everybody look bad by making them miss. You know, that speed and angle changing that he's got is really quite outstanding. And I think that's where it's problematic for Merab this weekend. The difference obviously being that Merab needs to get his hands on him, and if he can, then that physically imposing wrestling game that he's got can somewhat nullify the movement of Dodson. But he's still got to close that distance to get his hands on him, which is the challenge.
If you're just joining our stream here on BT Sport YouTube or Facebook channel, we're still waiting for Daniel Cormier, Junior Dos Santos, Herbert Burns, and Danny Chavez to weigh in. Everybody else has gone through for the UFC 252 card, which goes down in the early hours of Sunday morning on BT Sport. 1 o'clock prelims, 3 o'clock for your main card. So I think it seems that we've got a little bit of a delay here. I think it's only fair that we talk about some of the other major talking points that are connected to the UFC right now. Some of you boys might have already seen on social media this week on Instagram, Tyrone Woodley, Colby Covington going back and forth, having a little bit of a chip at each other. That's been going on for some time. But it seems this week, according to Tyrone Woodley's Instagram, that he's confirmed that September the 19th, those two lads will be having a bit of a go at each other. And I saw in the fallout of that, Leon Edwards, our own welterweight, just starting to do a bit of matchmaking himself. He's getting a bit more vocal on social media, is Leon, and I kind of like this. We've said this about him before. He's doing the business in the octagon. He might need to get a little bit mouthy outside the octagon in order to get the fight that he wants. We think it's going to be Gilbert Burns and Usman for the title when Usman is fit and ready to rock and roll. We now have Woodley and Colby Covington matched up. Leon Edwards hasn't got a fight. Neither's our boy Jorge Masvidal. Now, I know financially there are other fights out there that Jorge Masvidal could look at, Nate Diaz being one of them, that will probably benefit him even more. But for us as fans, come on, man. We want to see the dessert to 3-piece and a soda, don't we, Dan?
Absolutely, we do, yeah. Yeah, I just wonder whether that boat has sailed, to be honest, because if you look at where Masvidal was at that point in his career, I mean, he was just about to hit superstardom. With that knockout, that was really his rocket booster. It was, going on from that is where he's really made a name for himself and become the BMF. And I think that there's a lot to risk for Masvidal taking that fight against Leon. As game as he is, he's also very intelligent. He's been in this game a long time. He knows where the risks are in this game. He knows where the big paydays are as well. I mean, if you're Masvidal, would you rather fight Leon or Colby? I know I'd rather fight, and I'm not a good wrestler. There's a difference between the two fighters. There's a difference between the risk that you take and the reward that you get. The risk to reward facing Leon is so steep that most people don't want it. That's why I was surprised that Tyron Woodley took that fight, and I think he was quite glad that it never ended up happening. I think Leon's the problem in the division. He's always that guy that can spoil the show and really make you look bad. And I think Masvidal is just as susceptible to that as everybody. Leon needs to be vocal because he's going to be struggling to get matchups otherwise. He's going to watch the division pass him by, and he's going to end up picking up the scraps, the other contenders that are floating around with no one else to face. It only takes one stray punch to derail his whole game. It's time for him to start calling for fights. It's time for him to start annoying people, upsetting people. Employ Darren Till. Darren Till's in the middle. Bring Darren Till in to run his social media or something. I don't know. He needs to be something, though, because the attention that he's attracting right now, he's not going to get in the title shot. Yeah.
No, fair comment. I think a lot of people would agree with everything that you said, that he is the problem in the welterweight division. Just on the other fight, Nick, that we've just been speaking about there, Tyrone against Colby Covington. We love them when they've got needle. We love it when they hate each other. And obviously, it's not confirmed as of yet by the UFC. We haven't got a venue as of yet, but let's just spitball and say that that's going to happen inside the Apex, the 25-foot octagon. They can't avoid each other, can they? There'll be action.
Oh, there'll certainly be action, yeah, exactly. There was certainly a lot of trash talk as well. Tyron Woodley, the public face of Tyron Woodley is quite a controversial, quite an abrasive character, and there was a time there I dubbed him as public enemy number one in the UFC. He was just, didn't seem to get any love off anybody. And the mad thing is, when you speak to Tyron away from the bright lights, when you catch up with him when he's on the school run and everything else, he's actually a really nice guy. And likewise, Colby, when you get Colby, who isn't in Colby mode, when he's just being Mr. Covington, he's actually a really nice guy as well. So both these guys understand it. They know how to sell a fight, and they realise that, you know, the only way either of them gets back anywhere near the frame of a title fight is by being vocal, selling a big event, putting in a big performance, and the two of them can do that together. So, and I think they know each other's style well. You know, there's a certain level of comfort in there to know that they got who they're going in, who they're getting into the octagon with, and what to expect. Whereas, as Dan says, neither of these guys want to face a Leon Edwards. There's just too much risk involved. He's the guy from Britain that nobody needs. He's absolutely excellent everywhere. His takedown defense is on point. His stand-up's probably better than both those guys, even though maybe he lacks a little bit of power in terms of tiring. But, you know, I think Leon is the guy for this division, but he's just got to stay ready, hasn't he? He's got to be ready when that phone call comes in. You know, you can't get to the point Leon is in right now, and then we're in the situation we're in and be told, right, you're flying to Abu Dhabi, you're going to take the fight, and knock it back, especially on the back of the fact that they originally said, right, fly to America now, you're going to take the fight, and he knocked that back as well. So I think Leon needs to be careful, because right now he's not anybody that's helping the division in terms of no one wants to fight him, and he's not willing to take fights at late notice. So he's got to make this fight happen for himself. And unfortunately, the last man he's got standing is Masvidal. And if I'm Jorge Masvidal, sorry, why would I want to face Leon Edwards when I've just lost the title fight anyway? Comprehensively. So if I beat Leon Edwards, chances are I'm not going to get a title fight straight away either. Or I'm going to go over here, fight Nate Diaz in a third fight, the second in a rematch. The second fight, the fight they had for the BMF belt was a comfortable fight for Masvidal anyway. And guess what? When I beat Nate Diaz, I'll put the BMF belt on the line against the Mr. Conor McGregor and make more money than I'm ever dreamt of. It's a no-brainer to me. And unfortunately, once again, Leon finds himself in a weird position that everybody else is looking that way, and Leon's got no one to fight.
Nick, I owe you a tenner. I don't know if you can see the question on screen there. I said that somebody would tweet something like that in within half an hour of the show.
Thank you.
It's taken us an hour.
Steve. Thanks for waiting, Steve.
There you go. It's taken an hour. Steve Cockrell there. When is the comeback fight? He ain't talking to me. He ain't talking to you, Nick. He's talking to the reptile. What have you got for me?
I'll tell you what, if I got on a plane now, I still reckon I'd be on the scales before DC. I'm working on it, look. I'm working on it. My condition's improving, look. I've got an 8-inch mohawk coming on now. Good to go. We're good to go. I'm just riding the crest of this lockdown wave. I've got my gym at home, and I'm ticking over nicely. I just don't know what's going on with the world at the moment. I don't know what fights are being made and where. So I'll stay ready, and then I don't have to get ready, as the saying goes.
Nick, has Dan sent you any of his new training gear? I don't know if you've seen his Instagram, but he's flogging some pretty stuff, pal. I ain't got no clobber off him yet. Have you?
Not yet, but I can't wait to get me "I Hate Dan Hardy" T-shirt. I'll tell you that.
It's on its way. It's on its way, Nick.
I'll be wearing that around the shopping centre. Absolutely no problem at all. But last time we were together, though, Dan, you were looking pretty lean. So I'm thinking, if and when the comeback is on, are we looking at 155 rather than 170?
I could definitely make 155 as well as 170 if I chose to. I mean, the thing is, in hindsight, I could have probably been a 55 all the way through my career. When I got to the UFC, because I was fighting so many bigger guys, I made it my point to be bigger instead of cutting down to 55. Now I'm training differently, and I've kind of, I've got more time to focus on other things. My natural weight is starting to level out a bit lower. So, I mean, the guys I'm looking at on 55ers, but most of them fight at 170 now as well. So, I mean, we can do 155, we can do 170, without a weight cut. We could do 162. I know I keep banging on about it, but we need this weight class. Every time I speak to one of these in-betweeners, I'm like, what do you reckon? 162 be good for you? And every single one of them's like, sign me up. So I'm getting a petition. I've got Paul Felder's name at the top of the petition. I don't want to do 55 anymore. But you look at some of the guys at 170 now compared to Felder, and this is where we need that new weight class in between. I tell you what, if they said let's do a 162 weight, fight, to introduce the weight class, I'll be there this weekend, no bother.
Listen, Nick, we sat down with GSP the other day to obviously do a program on what went down between himself and Dan Hardy, and I could see that Dan were getting itchy again. We were watching the fight back, and he were on the edge of his seat. He's twitching around like this. He's thinking to himself, "Yeah, I fancy a bit of this. This is a bit of me."
Of course he did. Of course he did. No, listen. That's the issue you see with Dan. Dan hasn't had a DC moment. He never got the sign-off moments. Dan never got the opportunity to go, right, this is my last one. I'm going to enjoy it and make the most of it. You know, Bisping got the opportunity to do that. DC gets the opportunity to do that this weekend. GSP did it numerous times. You know, and I think somebody like Dan, a fighter like Dan, who's so committed to the game, you need that moment. You need to know yourself. Dan needs to know. Dan needs to do a training camp and have a fight and come out of that fight and go, brilliant. That's all I needed to know. Thank you very much. That's me done. Great. It's like just closing the book, closing that final chapter. And I think at the moment, unfortunately, Dan's book is still a little bit open. And I think until he gets to close that page, and he needs to be able to close that page himself, he'll always be talking about the comeback, man. Absolutely. Of course he will.
Listen, can we be the corner guys? I've always wanted to do the... I don't want to do the fight. I just want to do the walk. Yeah, some cool tunes. We'll make that trot. Yeah. We'll do that.
The bucket guy.
Why not?
You can be the bucket guy, holding his t-shirt.
I ain't giving him any advice. I'm just spitting to that.
If you can say my opponent's name correctly, then yeah, you can call him.
He's got us. He's gone for that. Paul Felder. See, easy. I've done it now.
Felder and I never fighting. That's not happening. We've spoken about this because he gets that a lot as well. People see us on the broadcast together and they think, oh, well, these guys are sitting next to each other. They can start punching each other in the face for us. No, I'd never want to fight Paul Felder. I enjoy his company too much.
Okay.
I mean, we'd have some great training sessions, but yeah, he's not. This is the thing. Like, if I'm having, maybe one or two more, I'm not fighting anybody I don't want to fight. Mm-hmm. And there's enough people in the world that I'd like to smack in the face without picking someone that I enjoy talking to.
Boroshina. See, I can pronounce that as well. Boroshina.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go, mate. I'll send you some weights. You can get there, son. You can get.
Sign me up, mate. Sign me up. You know me. Always ready.
Just in case you're wondering, what are these three clowns doing on this stream? Just having a bit of a crack. We're waiting for DC, is what we're doing. As well as that, Junior Dos Santos, Herbert Burns, and Danny Chavez. They're the only four fighters that haven't weighed in as of yet. Stipe Miocic well and truly through at 233 pounds, looking absolutely impeccable. He looked like I dream I look when I'm on the beach. That's how good he was looking, ready for this showdown tomorrow in the trilogy. As I said, we're just waiting for four fighters, one of which being Daniel Cormier. If you want to continue to join in the conversation with us, you're more than welcome to do so. Use the hashtag OpenMatt on the BT Sport Twitter feed. You can also drop your thoughts in the comments on YouTube and on Facebook as well. Here's a question from Utse Shalan. I apologise if I've pronounced your name incorrect. Dan always has a go at me for pronouncing fighters' names incorrect, so it's no different for me to get a viewer of ours incorrect as well. But is Tony versus Dustin #1 contender match? We know that Khabib and Justin Gaethje, that is rumoured for October, that those two guys will be throwing down for the full lightweight title. Tony versus Dustin Poirier, Dan, is that the #1 contender fight for you?
I don't see why not. I mean, the thing is with the lightweight division, you've always kind of got a couple of #1 contender options there ready to go. I mean, I think that the winner of this fight is absolutely a top contender. It's with the lightweight division, with the pieces moving so much and so quickly, and with people stepping. I mean, you never know when Conor McGregor steps back into the sport. He's immediately #1 contender over these two boys just out of marketability alone. So this is the thing. You've got to win fights in the lightweight division just to hold ground. And both of these guys are in striking distance from a title shot at any point in their career. Especially at this point, they're both just come off losses to title contenders, to champions. We know what they're capable of. It's just a case of staying relevant, and that's what these fights are about now. I mean, they're two of the best in the world, no doubt. I would be interested to see either of them back up there with a title opportunity.
Personally, you just mentioned Conor's name there. I'd love him and Dustin to roll it back with the way that Dustin performed against Dan Hooker, and obviously I've just mentioned they're coming off the back of that defeat to Khabib. I just think he's developed so much, Dustin Poirier, and it'd be a wonderful fight to see him and Conor going at it again. But I wouldn't be against Tony Ferguson, of course, and either one of the two that I've just mentioned having a go at it Nick, just on what Dan said there about marketability, it baffles me. It absolutely baffles me that a lot of fans absolutely hate on the marketability of a fighter, and us saying when Conor McGregor's ready to come back, he's of course in prime position for either an interim or a title shot straight away, just based on his name, irrelevant of whether he's competed at 155 for God knows how many years or not.
I know it's crazy, isn't it? But it's all about the money at the end of the day. This is a business, isn't it? You know, and it's all about bringing in those viewers. And I hate to say it, MMA guys, and we all like to put our arms around the sport and say, we've been watching it longer than you. I remember when Tito fought, I remember Pride, I was watching then, and all this kind of stuff. But I'm sorry to say, we need casual eyeballs. I know that's a taboo word in fight sports, but embrace the casuals. The more casuals that watch fight sports, then the more money gets put into the sport, the bigger TV exposure, the bigger the pay-per-views, the bigger everything else. And Conor McGregor's the king of that. You know, he's brought more eyeballs to this sport than anybody else in history. So he deserves that respect. And also, I think sometimes Conor's run, his record, his actual fighting ability inside the octagon and what he managed to do in that 8-year period or whatever it was, gets overlooked because of the way he behaves outside the octagon or whatever it may be. But Conor McGregor can fight. He can back it up inside the octagon. He came back and fought Khabib after 2 years absence from mixed martial arts. He was away just focusing on boxing. He did the whole circus thing with Floyd Mayweather. By the way, he was
enjoying himself.
He went 10 rounds.
He was enjoying himself.
But he went 10 rounds with the greatest boxer of this generation. Whether Mayweather carried him or not, he still won the first 3 or 4 rounds. Conor, he still had a good old crack. So, I hate it when people put a mark against Conor's name. The guy's earned more money than most of the UFC roster put together on his own. Of course he's going to come back, and of course he's going to get the biggest opportunities. Don't be a hater. Just understand the sport, understand the game. We need casuals. We need more eyeballs, because guess what? The more people that watch UFC, the more people that engage with MMA, the bigger the sport gets. And then the cooler you look when you walk to the water cooler in work and go, I've been watching it for years. So it's good for everyone.
This is a weird question that's on our screen. I don't know if you can see that. Johnny Bones Jones versus Tyson Fury. What do you reckon?
We know the answer to this one. We spoke to Tyson Fury back in last time we were in Vegas.
Yeah,
and he as long as it's a boxing match, he'll fight anybody in the world, and would be
annihilate him.
Would be an absolute nightmare for anyone in the world, including John Jones. And I think Jones knows that himself. But Tyson also knows that anytime it comes to anything other than punching, he wants no part of it. He even said that to us. He's like, I'd be so uncomfortable on my back, I wouldn't even know what I was doing. I'd be no use at all. So it depends on the rule set.
Yeah, man.
Somebody's obviously bought the new UFC computer game.
Exactly.
There, and they're just trying a few things out there, Nick.
Stick to UFC 4, the video game. Yeah, crack on, enjoy yourself. Do all these fantasy matchups can go there, but yeah, Johnny Bones versus Tyson Fury will only ever happen when you're pressing the X and the zeros or whatever it may be on your video game.
Look at there. There's a 40-year-old man who's not played PlayStation for ages.
Do they still have X's and zeros?
Nintendo.
Does people still play PlayStations? I don't know.
The thing is, before we started the show, you were singing the Mario theme tune.
Yeah, no, Super Mario. Yeah.
So you've obviously been playing something recently.
That's it.
Or your kids.
That was the pinnacle of my Super Mario Kart. That's when you should have just stopped video games at Super Mario Kart. That's when it peaked, in my opinion.
Question on screen regarding Leon Edwards. We've been speaking about him quite a lot when we've been speaking about the welterweight division, and they've mentioned Michael Chiesa's name there. Listen, it's an interesting fight, and I think it'd get a lot of people excited, but I don't see the point of Leon Edwards taking a fight like that when he's built himself up to the level that he's at right now. He's on the cusp of something. Let's not forget, he was just offered a title shot. He says he wasn't ready, and therefore they went elsewhere with Gilbert Burns, and then that fell off for Jorge Masvidal. There's only 2 fights, really, that you look at. If he's not getting Usman, you're looking at Colby, aren't you? And you're looking at Masvidal. That's what you're looking at. That's what he should be trying to get. Michael Chiesa, with all due respect to him, I don't think he does anything for Leon Edwards at this time, Dan.
No, I don't think it does either. But this is kind of like what we were discussing about lightweight a moment ago. You know, if you're Tony or Dustin, if you lose that fight, then you are now susceptible to a matchup against the likes of Dan Hooker, Charles Oliveira, someone else that's trying to make a name for themselves. But like it's almost like a punishment for coming off a loss. It's like, well, now you're susceptible to being a stepping stone for the next up and comers. Like that in that circumstance that would be Leon Edwards unnecessarily opening the door to Michael Chiesa in the top 5. And it's not a fight that Michael Chiesa can't win either. He's a very talented individual. And amazing that he ever made 155 when you stand next to him, because he's massive. I think Michael Chiesa is a good example of someone that could be a real problem at the welterweight division. But what Chiesa needs to wait for is someone to slip a little bit. He needs one of the top 5, top 10 to slip, to lose a fight, and then he calls them out. Same situation that Sean O'Malley's in right now. Like, he needs to wait for someone like a Sun Sao or a Marlon Moraes, someone like that, to slip and to be susceptible for his call out. And at the moment, Leon, I don't feel like he's susceptible to call outs. He's the one that needs to be doing the call out.
Yeah. Whilst we're talking about British fighters, I think we've got to speak about Darren Taylor's great performance recently against Robert Whittaker on Fight Island. And I want to talk about that middleweight division, because we know that Izzy and Paulo Costa are going to go at it. We know that
next
Robert
to the scale, the other half of our main event, Daniel Cormier.
Hold that thought for a second. Let's see where Daniel Cormier is at. Here we go. We're going to get the main event wrapped up now, hopefully. Stipe Miocic, the champion, weighing in a little earlier on, 233 pounds. Daniel Cormier, his last ride. He's obviously given up on Junior Dos Santos and Herbert Burns and Danny Chavez weighing in, who may be having a little bit of a struggle. Not JDS, of course, but maybe the other two. But he's here. Socks. I like that. Socks and sandals. That's how we roll, DC, for the final time.
236.
236, wow. The official weight for Daniel Cormier.
Wow.
Very similar, Dan, to the second fight, which is 10 pounds lighter than he was for the first fight.
Yeah, 236 and a half he was for the second one, almost exactly the same. Yeah, I don't know what could be read into it, to be honest, because the first round I felt like he looked better and he hit harder and he was 10 pounds heavier. I don't know whether that was 10 pounds more muscle mass. I don't know whether his conditioning was changed for the second fight. I like the fact that he's coming in lighter for this one, because it shows that he's ready to go 5 rounds if needs be. DC needs that work rate, because that's one of his major weapons when he's fighting. If he comes in, ready to give everything for 3 rounds, he's already going to sell himself short. Yeah. So I'm hoping that the 236 on the scales means that he's ready to work hard for 25.
Nick, what's your conclusions on that?
I'll be honest, I thought he'd come in a little bit heavier. You come in light. You come in, 236 and a half. You run out of gas midway through the fight. You get stopped. The guy walks through your punches, eats your punches up a little bit more. You come in 10 pounds heavier for the first fight, and you knock him out in the first round. There's a certain way where mentally you think, well, I did it the first time and I was this size, so I'll do it again the second time. Of course, you don't know the manner in which you put the weight on for the first fight. You don't know whether Stipe did underappreciate Cormier's punching power and everything else. I think right now that's evident that Cormier just wants to be the best Daniel Cormier he can be, and he believes he successfully fights better around that weight, sub 240. He feels like he's stronger, he's got more stamina, he can go for longer. And it's all about DC at this point. There may well be a little bit of nervous energy in there as well. He wants the last time we see him inside the octagon to be the very best version of himself. And understandably, that's probably a little bit lighter than he has been before. So again, it's hard to look too far into it, because at this stage, we're talking about the 2 best heavyweights walking planet Earth, 2 baddest men on the planet. It's going to happen. They're going to collide on Sunday morning. And once again, I've watched them both weigh in. I'm no closer to knowing what's going to happen. All I do know is that it's going to be memorable, because the first 2 fights were absolute classics. So,
if you are just joining us on the stream here on Facebook or YouTube on BT Sport, Stipe Miocic weighing in, the champion, 233 pounds. Daniel Cormier weighed in at 236 pounds, only 3 pounds between them. Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera both weighing in at 136. So that's your main and core main events all sorted. We're still waiting for Junior Dos Santos, Herbert Burns and Danny Chavez off the prelims, but everybody else has gone through. Only TJ Brown missing weight by half a pound a little earlier on. We'll get you more information on what happens with that fight with Danny Chavez, who we're waiting for in a moment too. I was just about to talk about middleweights, because we know that Gilbert Burns Sorry, not middleweight. The Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa are going to be going at it for the title. We know that Robert Whittaker is taking on Jared Cannonier, which is a sensational fight, not confirmed yet by the UFC, but both of those guys have been talking about it on their social medias. And then that leaves Darren Till. Now, obviously, given a recent performance, I would probably go look at Jack Hermansson. However, there's a certain former middleweight champion this week who's come out of retirement and mentioned Darren Till's name. Luke Rockhold fancies the knock. Nick, sign it up.
Easy money. Easy money. Yeah, listen, if Rockhold's doing the right thing, and that's come back into the sport, calling out a realistic opponent as the former champion. You know, he's not come out and called out Adesanya. He's not even come out, you know, and jumped straight in there and called out to jump in against Whittaker or Cannonier. He realizes the structure of that top 10, the structure of who can move what where. And he also realizes that Darren Till remains, you know, one of the biggest names in that middleweight division. He does have a huge following. Rockhold probably accepts, you know what, I may even have to go to Fight Island, or even if it's early next year, hopefully, maybe even over to England for that fight to happen. But he's more than prepared to travel Rockhold. And he realizes maybe he's seen something. Maybe he's seen something in Till, sees something in Hermansson, feels that he's got the edge over those guys and sees it as a quick way back to the top. So I'm all for it, man. You know, I'm not going to knock the guy for calling somebody out. I totally get it. And if there was Darren Till, I'd be licking me chops. I think Luke Rockhold remains a bigger name in the sport than Jack Hermansson and is less of a threat than Jack Hermansson. So I think Till will be jumping at the opportunity once his knee recovers, jumping at the opportunity to get in there with the former champion, because I think that just springboards him back to being 2 fights away from a title fight anyway.
Of course you're licking your chops. You're giddy as, because of the name that Luke Rockhold obviously carries for a fight with Darren Till. When I thought about a Luke Rockhold comeback, Dan, I don't know about yourself, Chris Weidman was the one that probably made more sense. Let's have a rematch there because of the narrative that both of those guys have been on. I think jumping in with one of the top 5, top 6 straight away for Luke was really dangerous, given past performances, his recent past performances.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also think it's quite a smart call out. You know, if you look at the other guys in the division, I mean, I think Jared Cannonier obviously matched up, but he's a very, very dangerous fight for anybody in this division. And I think style-wise, stylistically, Jack Hermansson is a problem for Rockhold because he's very active, he's very awkward, and his ground game is something to be taken serious. Darren Till, you know, he's a long-range southpaw. He likes that long left hand. If you think about the techniques that Rockhold uses, it's that lead right hook counter and the body kick. Like, he's gonna be working them all day against Darren Till as he's throwing that left hand. I think he's picking Darren Till based on how he sees his skills fitting in with what Till brings to the table, and also, you know, like Rockhold's, you know, he's been a champion, he's been around for a while. There's still a brashness to Darren Till, which I think Rockhold might feel will work against him. Having said that, I think Rockhold might regret that if Darren Till takes the fight, because he's going to have to block him on all social media. Because Rockhold can't take that kind of onslaught. He won't find it funny like he did.
Yeah, he'll destroy him. And Rockhold will end up coming in there with a big hot head, trying to prove a point. He'll get carried out. So
look at you. I knew you could resist.
And listen, I don't think there's many fight fans out there that don't get a nice little buzz when we see Luke Rockhold get carried out anyway. He's one of those guys, isn't it? We like seeing him getting punched in the face.
You're brutal.
It's because he's got a good-looking face, Nick. That's what
I'm just jealous.
Yeah, he's too good looking.
I'm just absolutely jealous, of course. The truth.
Don't know if you can see that tweet on screen there, boys. Still continuing the theme of the middleweights. I know we've spoken about Jared Cannonier in the past, Dan. He is a real problem for every single person in this division. Taking on Robert Whittaker, it's a sensational fight. You're looking at it and you go, they're next in line now, obviously. Whittaker, Cannonier, whoever comes through, he's going to get the winner of Israel Adesanya and Paulo Costa. Cannonier, man, he has got all the skills and power in the world, because let's not forget, this is a guy that has fought up at heavyweight, light heavyweight, now down at middleweight, to give Robert Whittaker a real night.
Yeah. And you look at, you know, you go back to his heavyweight fights, and the way that, you know, the skills that he had at heavyweight, the way that he moved was his advantage. Like, he was faster than those guys, but he also hit very, very hard. You know, they struggled to keep up with him, but they struggled to deal with his power as well. Then when he moved down to light heavyweight, it just kind of accentuated everything. when you see him at middleweight, you really understand how scary he is because he's fast, he's powerful, and that 240-pound weight vest that he was wearing when he was stepping on the heavyweight scales, that's no longer there. Like, I mean, this might sound stupid, but I used to wear ankle weights to school during the day for when I got to Taekwondo in the evening. I felt like I could jump higher. You imagine if he's took 40 pounds off his frame, how much faster he feels like he can move now when he's throwing punches. Yeah. Like just the psychological trick on himself is going to make him feel almost invincible. I don't even think we've seen a fraction of Jared Cannonier's game yet. I think he's going to be really problematic for Whittaker. Whittaker was a bit tentative in that first round against Till, and I think if he takes a shot from Cannonier like he did from Till, he might not get back up.
You wore ankle weights to school?
Yeah. Yeah, this is true. I used to put them on at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I used to take them off at 6 o'clock in the evening before Taekwondo started. And then I'd spend 2 hours throwing kicks. Yeah, true story.
I hope you didn't have swimming lessons, pal. Jeez, that would have been difficult, wouldn't it?
My swimming and my wrestling about the same.
There you go. Inside knowledge there from Dan Hardy. Both guys looking tremendous on the scales. Stipe and DC, a few people making a comment on that. And we've got people have started to send in fantasy fights now between Matt. This is Matt Durnley going for Khabib versus Usman. Who wins? I'm more in, following the conversation that we had the other day, Dan, I'm more in for Khabib versus Georges St-Pierre. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Usman's an interesting challenge for Khabib, but it could be a wrestling extravaganza where Khabib's just not quite big enough, or where he's able to put a pace on Usman where the Usman can't keep up, and Khabib might be able to break that conditioning of Usman. It is an interesting fight, absolutely. It's if you're Khabib though, and you've probably got 2 or 3 fights left in your career, unless you want the welterweight gold, then you'll fight anybody that's holding it. GSP is more valuable. Yeah. A win over GSP is more valuable than any belt you can have in the UFC. Yeah. Doesn't matter at any point in his career. If Khabib can go out and retire, say if he retires at 30-0 with coming off a win over GSP, wow. That's it. You're done, my friend. You're in the history books forever.
Yeah. Mm. It's never going to happen. GSP is never going to fight Khabib.
Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep wheeling all over our bonfire?
Because it comes back to John Jones fighting Adesanya or whatever it may be. You've got to look at the fight for what it is. Why would GSP risk his legendary, iconic, arguable pound-for-pound greatest of all time status coming back to fight a guy that's on a complete tear, unbeaten run in his weight division? And I just think I just can't see that fight happening at all. There's no chance. And I think Khabib versus Usman, I'd have to go with Usman just on size, to be honest with you. But I think we'll see a version of Khabib versus Usman, except it won't be Khabib. It'll be Chimaev versus Usman.
Yeah.
I think Chimaev, the way he's looked so far, and listen, I know he's beat, one middleweight who's very much a veteran, and another guy making his UFC debut in the welterweight division. But from what I've seen so far with Chimaev, that guy is Khabib XL anyway. And that guy is on he's destined to fight for the welterweight title at some stage, maybe even the middleweight title, the way he looks at the moment. I don't think we can get him to a title shot quick enough. And again, people like Leon Edwards and stuff, they need to be careful. They need to be looking over the shoulder because the UFC are going to move this guy and they're going to move him fast. And at some stage, you're either going to be thrown in with this guy in the final eliminator, or you're going to do well to actually jump out the way and let him march on through, because Chimaev's going to get a title shot within probably the next 18 months, 2 years. And that's probably about 5 or 6 fights. I think he'll be there, if not sooner. So you will get that fight in one weird sense, but it won't actually be Khabib. It'll be the monster from Sweden.
Well, I know that they were attempting to try and get him on some of these cards at the Apex, but obviously with visa issues and travel restraints and all those types of things, it's very difficult to get non-American based fighters into the States to compete. Yeah. So if the rumours are true that we're going back to Fight Island in the not too distant future, listen, he's done 2 in 10 days. I wouldn't be surprised if we see 3 in 14, eh? He's going to go full Wolf of Wall Street. He ain't going home. If you put him on the first card, I'll fight midweek, and then I'll fight the following Saturday as well. That's what Chimaev should be aiming to do.
That's it. Just go up the weight classes. Yeah. Welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight.
Just have him at every event, just by the scales. And if someone doesn't make weight, just go, right, you're fighting Chimaev now instead.
That's your punishment. So if you miss weight, that's your punishment. You're fighting this dude.
It's like the executioner, isn't it? It's funny though. I honestly can't think of a time. I mean, genuinely, I've been racking my brain. I can't think of another fighter, another time when someone stepped into the UFC, had 2 back-to-back performances like that, and been the scariest person on the roster immediately. I literally can't think of it. It is unprecedented. Yeah. And like not only the quick succession of the wins back-to-back, but then the way he carries himself, it's like, whoever, middleweight champion, John Jones, whatever. He's just not bothered. I think he's a fascinating addition to the UFC. Yeah. And the problem is going to be getting him matched up. That's like Nick said, look over your shoulder. Because like for all the people calling out O'Malley and for all the people that were calling out McGregor, we're not going to see the same thing with Khamzat.
Nope.
Like, people aren't going to want that smoke. No way. No way. GSP would rather fight Usman and Khabib on the same night than Khamzat. That's
at the same time. At the same time.
I honestly, and just going back to the GSP thing, I actually think that stepping up to middleweight and facing Bisping was probably a bigger risk for him than Khabib, just purely based on styles. But I think Khabib's a real interesting test for GSP. The GSP could definitely make 55, and I mean he said that several times in the past. And I think that his wrestling game for MMA, it might be just enough to keep Khabib on the feet, and then we've got Superman jabs all day.
Absolutely, man. Stop it. See, you get me excited about it. Iwi's all over the bonfire. I don't know when I'm coming to going with you guys. I'm all over, but I'm excited for it. Fingers crossed we can get it made. Question on screen here. About Alex Volkanovski and who his next opponent should be, coming off the 2 fights with Max Holloway, of which he had his hand raised on both occasions. Second one, I think, for all of us, contentiously. I don't know where you guys are at. I don't think there's an absolute stellar #1 contender standing right out there at the moment. I think there's a nice little round-robin tournament between everybody else to kind of distinguish that. I know that there's a lot of fans that think Zabit's the guy that maybe should get the shot. Where are you at, Dan, first?
I need to see Zabit over 5 rounds, or at least scheduled for a 5-round fight. I think that there are 2 things in my head that are criteria for a contender. #1, you've got to step on the scales the fight before yours at 155 or whatever weight class it is, 145 in this instance. And the other thing, you've got to at least been lined up for a 5-round fight, even if it didn't go for 5 rounds. You need to step into the octagon for 1 round knowing that there's going to be a 5th. And I think psychologically it changes the way that people fight. And I think what we've seen with Zabit, and the reason I think it's even more important with him, is that we've seen him be absolutely outstanding in the 1st and 2nd round. We've seen him fade in the 3rd. And I think against Calvin Kattar, you add an extra 2 rounds on the end of that, I think Kattar takes that fight.
Yeah, agreed.
I think Kattar knew that as well. And I think that, he's much more of a 5-round fighter naturally because of the way that he fights. Whereas, and it's the same with Max Holloway. Max Holloway is much more of a 5-round fighter. I think it will be a challenge for Max to go back to 3 because he's really got to pick up his pace. But, Calvin Kattar can fix that by picking up the pace, and we've seen him do that in his recent fight. I've not seen Zabit go past 3 rounds and look good, though. So for me to get excited about that fight, I just need to see it first.
Out of those contenders, Nick, which one excites you the most? Is it Zabit, or do you look at someone like Yair Rodriguez, who says flashes the comes and seems to have got it all together recently?
Yeah, the problem with Yair Rodriguez is I need to see him fight Zabit because they've talked about that fight so much. And I'm like, are you guys ever going to fight? I'd make that a final eliminator. But in the meantime, first and foremost, I'd absolutely do Max Holloway again. I know Alexander's got 2.
You want to go third up?
I know he's got 2 wins over Volkanovski, but I've got to be honest. Over those 10 rounds, I scored more rounds to Max Holloway than I did to Volkanovski. So I actually think Max got the better of those 2 fights anyway. So I wouldn't be against seeing a 3rd fight. Maybe it doesn't make sense because of the way the judges scored that fight and Alex has still got the belt. Here's a mad one for you, and I'd throw this in there absolutely because I love the guy. What about Korean Zombie? Chan Young-sung. Absolutely put Korean Zombie in there. He's absolutely mustard. Coming off a couple of big wins. I think he beat Frankie Edgar last time out. He's absolutely in the mix, of course. There's a lot of talk of Korean Zombie fighting Brian Ortega. Ortega's not fought since he lost that fight against Max Holloway. That feels like about 20 years ago now. It's crazy what is in activity, but I know they've had a bit of beef out at ringside as well. I think Ortega was supposed to have slapped the Korean rapper.
Next to the scale, Danny Chavez.
Here we go.
Yeah, Chan Sung
This is
Jung,
going to be
Korean Zombie. If not, Max Holloway.
Okay, we'll pick this up in a moment or two. We've got 25 minutes left of the official weigh-ins. This is Danny Chavez, who's taking on TJ Brown. TJ Brown missed weight earlier, so let's see where Danny's at.
146, the official weight for
even.
Danny Chavez.
He must have a good sauna. So you got 146 even for Danny Chavez. This is a featherweight contest, of course. TJ Brown, 146.5 a little earlier on. So it'd be interesting to see what the chat is there. We're still waiting for JDS. He's having a laugh with us, isn't he? He's in the buffet. He's having a whale of a time.
Yeah.
But Herbert Burns is a bit of a concern, Dan. Where's Herbert Burns right now? Featherweight contest against Daniel Pineda. Pineda came through at 146 a little earlier on. And obviously the brother of Gilbert Burns, Herbert Burns, who's on a good streak at the moment, not to weigh in as of yet. He's got 25 minutes to do so.
Am I right in thinking that his last fight was a catchweight at 150? Yeah, I think because is this not him moving back down to featherweight? And I think he was kind of, I think he was
in between
the first time around because of the time he was taking the fight on. So they'd agreed at 150. I mean, the extra £5 is everything, really. Like, I've cut to 160 a couple of times. If I think about cutting an extra £5 off that, it's a big ask if you've not done a test cut. That'd be my main concern. Or maybe he just anticipated it was going to be a bit quicker than it is. You know, he might be backstage in a sauna right now, sweating profusely, and that weight might be dropping off him. Or the other alternative is he might be sitting in a bath or in a sauna and there's no liquid coming out of him at all, and he might just be dry. That's what we'll find out when he steps on the scales and how he looks when he steps on the scales. But certainly, it's you'd want him to be there right now. I mean,
when was the last time you cut through to 160?
Me?
Recently?
I might have done a test cut. I wouldn't tell you to though. I know you've got a big mouth and a successful podcast, so I wouldn't give you that kind of information.
There you go. So we're going down to 155, Nick. Just keep an eye on that. Thank you very much. If you are just joining us, you've already missed Stipe and DC weigh-in. Stipe weighed in at 233 pounds. Daniel Cormier came in at 236, so not too much between them. Stipe looked an absolute $1 million. Muscles on muscles on muscles, and Daniel Cormier looks as he normally does, fit and ready for action in the heavyweight main event, the trilogy fight, which goes down in the early hours of Sunday morning. 1 o'clock prelims, 3 o'clock main event for UFC 252. The co-main event, the bantamweight contest between Sean O'Malley and Marlon Vera, both guys hitting 136. We're still waiting for JDS, and we're still waiting for Herbert Burns. Everybody else has weighed in, as I just mentioned a moment or two ago. TJ Brown is the only person to have missed weight by half a pound as of now for that featherweight contest against Danny Chavez. And of course, as you already know, Ion Kutabala against Ankalaev fell off because Ion Kutabala sadly got COVID-19. We're led to believe that has been rescheduled for the end of the month. So 29th of August, those boys will be going at it. And just on that fight, I mean, it is a little bit disappointing that fight has fallen off, Nick, given the ridiculous stoppage that we saw in the first fight between them. And they were fighting even before the bell went, you know. So even during the introductions, Kutabala, he kind of gets himself into a bit of a state, doesn't he, when he's fighting, and he's legging it across the octagon there and jumping all over the face of Ankalaev, which then led to this weird 38-second stoppage. It's a shame that it's not on this one, but we are going to get it in a couple of weeks' time.
Yeah, and I'm glad the UFC have remade it straight away because there is completely unfinished business there. You know, the referee did make a bad call on that one. You know, I think he just misread the fight. He misread what was going on inside there. Kutilabra's, rope-a-dope tactics, if you like, and stopped the fight prematurely. So that's the great thing about, the UFC having these guys all signed to the same roster. We can just completely run that thing back, get a definitive answer. It's a shame we didn't get it, but you know what? As far as I'm concerned, people often say to me, "Oh my goodness, one of the UFC fighters has been flagged for COVID," and I'm like, "Yeah, that just means it works. That means the quarantine and situation, the COVID testing that the UFC have got in place, is working." And the good thing is, touch wood, we haven't seen a fighter confirmed as a COVID test, and then suddenly it knocked the whole card off because it's run through, the entire team, like we have seen in other sports, baseball and football in Scotland and whatever else, where one player comes back in and suddenly it's gone right through the team. The way the UFC have got it set up with their kind of bubble is that the fighters and everyone around these events are being tested in their hometowns, in their home cities, home countries, before they even travel. And then on arrival at the fighter hotel, they are tested again, quarantined in their room, and only allowed to leave their room when they come back as COVID-free. So what the UFC are doing, and they were the pioneers to do it as well, they kind of wrote the book on how to do sport during the COVID era, is working 100%. So that can only be worth a pat on the back to the UFC.
I do feel incredibly fortunate, and I'm sure you guys do as well, that we are connected to this sport, UFC, this franchise, because as we look around the world and the other sporting franchises that have attempted to get themselves back to some type of normalcy and some type of entertainment normalcy for their fan bases. I mean, you tune into football, it's a million miles off. We've got a fantastic game tonight on BT Sport, haven't we, between Bayern Munich and Barcelona, and I'm sure it'll be a wonderful game of football, no question about it, but without fans in there, it does lack something. Whereas when you watch the UFC, because they've managed to keep the level of competition to the levels that they've managed to do so, I don't think they've skipped a beat. Of course, I want fans in there, and it most certainly adds to the adrenaline and the enjoyment of the night. But because they've managed to keep the level of competition there, Dan, I think that is the reason why they've managed to come out head and shoulders above everybody else right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, the other thing as well that occurred to me when I was in Fight Island, there's quite an intensity to the environment when you're in there. Like there is an intensity when the fans are there, but it's kind of spread out and everyone's buzzing and there's just this electricity in the atmosphere. Whereas when you're in there and there's a handful of people there, you can hear the two corner teams, you can hear the emotion in their voice, you can hear the punches and the kicks landing, and a lot of the time you can hear the fighters breathing as well, which is very strange, especially when one of them's like smushed up against the fence and you can hear him it's a very, very intense experience. And what's great about the way that the UFC production is set up is that it picks up all of that. And it picked up all of that even when there was a crowd in, but you just didn't get to focus on it quite as much. Whereas now that there's not the background noise, now that there's not the distraction of the commotion of, the crowd are doing this, or they're making this noise, or, this is happening or whatever, everybody is focused entirely on what's happening in the octagon. Like there's never a circumstance when I'm commentating, when I'm looking around to see what the reaction from the fans is.
Yeah,
that's something that's quite nice in those events. I remember when Conor McGregor fought Brandao in Dublin. I stood up and took my headphones off as he walked out, just so you could really understand what's going on around you. But when you're there and there's nothing else to distract you, you're entirely tuned in to what's going on in the octagon. I think Joe Benavidez says it brings a purity to it, which I agree with. But it also brings an intensity with it. It brings a realistic intensity to what sport. We say sport. We're fighting. You can play sports. You don't play MMA. No. You fight MMA. And I think that intensity is better communicated without a crowd.
Absolutely. If you're just joining us on the stream, we've got about 15, 16, 17 minutes remaining of the official weigh-ins for UFC 252. Everybody's gone through, bar Junior Dos Santos. He's just having a laugh with his heavyweight. I don't know what he's definitely not cutting weight, so he's probably just waiting for the buffet to finish. And Herbert Burns, that is a little bit of a worry. Coming down from a catchweight into featherweight, taking on Daniel Pineda. So we'll keep you across that. We're not going anywhere for 15 minutes. So if they aren't here or they miss, you will see it here on the BT Sports stream, whether you're watching that on Facebook or YouTube. You're more than welcome as well to come and join our conversations. Hashtag OpenMat on Twitter and just drop whatever you want to say in the comment section on YouTube or on Facebook. Now, our production team came up with this poll that you can see on our screen. Lunatics, every single one of them, right? Because I've responded immediately yesterday when they sent it round to us in our WhatsApp group and went, none of them. Do you think I'm absolutely mental? There's no way that I'm getting in with any of these heavyweights at all. I couldn't survive a minute, let alone a round. But I suppose we'll play the hypotheticals. If you could survive a round with any one of the 4 UFC 252 heavyweights on the main card, who are you picking? You've got Stipe, DC, you've got Junior Dos Santos and Jorginho Rozenstruik. How have our audience, right, gone 35% Daniel Cormier?
Mental.
You're a lunatic. He's going to pick you up and he's going to lie on you. Are you not claustrophobic?
Yeah,
I hate all that.
But am I confused here? Is that which one would you rather fight? Which one could you survive against over 5 minutes?
I think so. I think that's what people
I think that is the question. Yeah, who could you survive
one round with?
You're not surviving 5 minutes with DC. You just pick you up and throw you on your backside.
I think people are looking at the shape of DC and thinking they can do a bit of a roadrunner act around the cage, and he won't catch up with you because he's a big dude.
It's a 25-foot cage,
but
boys.
Let me tell you, DC is not Wile E. Coyote. He's not just going to chase you around until you throw a big fake hole in the wall and then he'll fall through the cage or whatever. DC is going to cut down the angles, uses Olympic caliber wrestling to absolutely slam you on the back and make it the longest 5 minutes of your absolute life. I'm quite surprised there that out of all those guys, you got Rosenstruck in there as well, who's going to head kick you from the other side of the octagon and just put you to sleep it straight away. I think out of all those guys, I wouldn't choose any, but of course, if I had to, I would choose Stipe. Because one, Stipe is predominantly, he likes to use his hands, stay with his boxing, so I think there's more chance to run away. But more than anything, the guy's a full-time paramedic and a firefighter. Empathy runs through his soul. He would look at you as this pathetic little person and probably go, "It's okay, son, I'm not going to hurt you, don't worry, put an arm around you." Some of those other guys would just beat the living daylights out of you for the fun. So people have missed the trick here. Just get in there, get the puppy dog eyes going, and Stipe would be like, "Come on, come to Uncle Stipe, I'll look after you."
Well, my tale's similar. I'm going to go JDS, and the reason for it is because I've seen him on the Brazilian version of Strictly Come Dancing, so I'm going to try and convince him, right, that's what we're doing. We're not actually fighting. We're here for a dance-off. So maybe I can convince him for that for 5 minutes. We'll do that before he realizes.
Next to the scale, Herbert Burns.
Here we go, boys. Let's go.
I did check, actually. He is a career featherweight. It was just his last fight that he was at a catchweight.
Yeah.
Maybe he let his body grow a bit too much during lockdown. Who knows?
Well, he's got 146 to hit. Daniel Pineda's done it a little bit earlier on. Well, featherweight contest. And remember, this has been boosted to the main card, obviously, with Kuchibala and Ankalaev falling off because of the COVID situation. These guys were boosted from prelims to main event. Doesn't look confident, doesn't it? Doesn't look happy. I was just
say that is not a confident stepping on the scales.
Very lethargic.
I've never seen a more defeated taking off a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Got a new weights guy as well.
Oh, and zoomed in. The extreme close-up.
149?
149.5, the official weight for Herbert.
Whoa!
Burns.
Nobody told Herbert.
Whoa!
Nobody told Herbert it wasn't a 150 like his last fight. Somebody should have told him. He must have missed the email.
I wonder if he's always been at 145 because his brother was at 155.
Yeah.
Maybe he just kind of got stuck in that weight class because that was, you know what I mean? Like he could quite easily move up to 155 now and not be treading on Gilbert Burns' toes in any way.
Yeah.
That's a big miss though, that, Dan, isn't it?
It is. It is a big miss. But then, he came in his last fight probably at 150 and felt quite comfortable. Probably cut a little bit of weight, but probably stepped on the scales at 150 feeling pretty good. Yeah. And then thought he was just going to replicate it and just drop the extra 4 pounds. But, sometimes your body just gets used to being bigger. I've just been having a look at his record because he stepped on the scales at 146 back in January. So he has made 146 this year. But then, a few pounds and a few weeks in isolation. It doesn't take much to add that to the frame, especially if you're not doing as much road work, you're not out running roads or whatever. You might be getting up in the morning and just throwing weights around. Who knows? But there always comes a point in a fighter's career where they do grow. You gain an extra 3 or 4 kilos and it just doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Maybe he's just turned a corner where he's now a lightweight.
And our last fighter to the scale, Junior Dos Santos.
Here he is. He's milked it. Everybody else has come through. Everybody's at the scales, and now Junior Santos is here for the party.
He'll be the lightest out of all of the heavyweights. He'll be like 254.
Yeah. He's going to come on with a croissant or something, isn't he?
Remember, Yves Edwards used to do that. There's a blast from the past for you boys. Yeah. You used to get on the scales with a something to eat.
Yeah. Come on, JDS, son.
I was never that comfortable on the scales. He's just brushing the toast crumbs from away.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, he's made us wait an hour and 50 minutes for it. this takeaway that I'm about to order is going to taste supreme, fellas, when we've done these weigh-ins. There's something about watching people weighing in the keks that makes me really hungry. Seeing everybody absolutely slim down. I think I've ordered 2 naan breads.
I think on one of these days, we should do a live sympathy weight cut for these boys.
Oh yeah.
All right, one more time.
Do it.
Junior
I
Dos
reckon
Santos.
I could make 205 at a push.
Get out.
I'll do light heavy.
So will I. Right, here we go. Look at him, he looks mint. Where have you been?
Take the socks off.
Oh, yeah, shoes
Get
as well.
them heavy shoes and socks off.
Yeah, Rosenstruck weighed in fully dressed with his shoes on.
The scales guys are in shifts now. Look, we've had to get a different guy doing the scales as well. It's been that long.
I thought they'd switched them out for you, Nick.
238.5, the official weight for Junior
There you
Dos Santos.
go.
He looks good as
Slightly heavier than the main event.
He looks good.
But he's there. Yeah, he looks great. 238 for Junior Dos Santos. Jorginho Rosenstruck weighed in earlier on at 254. So big, you know, there's a bit of extra power behind the punch of Rosenstruck going into that fight. But the other 2 heavyweights on the main card, 233 for Stipe and Daniel Cormier at 236 pounds.
Yes.
Job done, boys.
Get it on.
Job done. Everybody through. The main talking points from it, of course, the main event. Both look really good. And obviously going to throw down for a fantastic trilogy for us. Herbert Burns missed weight badly, 149.5 pounds coming in for that featherweight contest with Daniel Pineda. And we also saw TJ Brown miss weight by half a pound. He's also fighting at featherweight against Danny Chavez. Super stuff. Thank you very much for your company this afternoon, gentlemen. Have you got a takeaway on order, Nick?
It's date night tonight. I hope that's still on the cards anyway. So I'm going to put my Gladzogs on and take the missus the local, I think.
There you go. Local's next door. Say he's a big spender, Dan. Big spender.
COVID?
Taking to watch the Barcelona game.
Exactly.
Gentlemen, enjoy your evening. Thank you very much for your company. And if you're still watching us, don't forget this goes down 1 o'clock prelims. It all gets underway UFC 252. That main card starts at 3 o'clock on BT Sport. Make sure you come and join us for it because the cherry on top of the cake is the trilogy. It is for the heavyweight championship of the world and the bragging rights of maybe the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time. Stipe Miocic, the champion, taking on Daniel Cormier. Should be an absolute cracker. We'll see.
Never before has a UFC light heavyweight champion moved up to challenge the heavyweight champion. Oh, he hurt him. Oh, Cormier knocks Miocic down. Daniel Cormier is the UFC heavyweight champion. The rematch is upon us. Stipe Miocic with a chance to regain the UFC heavyweight title as he re-engages with the man who beat him for the belt. Oh, right hand up top. DC's hurt. Cormier in trouble. Oh, that's it. Stipe exacts his revenge.
They need to settle this once and for all.
For legacy, this fight is for history.
I've accomplished everything that I've ever wanted to accomplish. I mean, I could have walked away, but my legacy matters to me. I have to right that wrong.
One of the greatest of all time, Daniel Cormier.
This fight's for legacy. This fight's for everything. I want to be remembered as one of the greatest fighters of all time. And this has huge stakes on it. The world's going to be watching. I have to win this fight.
Stipe Miocic, the most accomplished UFC heavyweight champion this octagon has ever seen.
Being UFC heavyweight champion is everything to me. I know I'm a better fighter. I'm going to prove it. Walking out with my belt.
And still. This is the fight that